you?
I'm good. How are
Good, good.
you?
It's always lovely being at SAMRO. It's like, what you call it? I stroll down memory lane. It's been a
I
while
can
since I've been
too.
here.
Welcome back.
Yeah, and as a visual artist, I like sitting next to Villa Pimzimba's Princess Magogo, which is like a SAMRO mascot,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah,
That is a masterpiece.
yeah, it's beautiful that music people also like visual arts. This
Yes.
is this is great. But Annabelle, we are here because there's just so much to talk about. There's just a lot of things that are in the media, a lot of things that are in the social media. Your members, millions and millions of your members have questions, and a lot of them feel they're not being heard. So we thought that this kind of conversation will allow us, or
Mm,
at least allow
mm,
you the space to, open up and ventilate
mm,
and take us through the points, the burning issues that many of the SAMRO members have, the confusion that's out there
yeah.
that's clarified. And there's a number of key issues that I would want us to go through. But what I thought um, we should start with is the idea of a home, the idea of the building.
Mm, mm,
I think for me, this that sets the tone
mm,
for so much that we
mm.
can flow from. Um, Talk to me about let's start it this way. Is SAMRO House up for sale?
Honest answer, no.
Right, right, right,
But I do want to provide context. I think it's
right,
important to
right,
provide
right, right.
context. So we get offers all the time, right? I think there's so much development happening in and around Braamfontein, and anybody would have seen that there's such a growth in terms of student housing in and around the university.
Right.
So we constantly are having prospective buyers knocking at our door, you know. And I'll give a very classic example. We used to own the property across the road, which was parking generally.
Right.
And 2 years ago, when I came into SAMRO, we concluded a deal to sell that. And lo and behold, there is student accommodation there, right? And in any business, for any business, those conversations are never closed off. So yes, there was an offer made, but the board decided not to sell. So there's no decision to sell SAMRO House.
Right. So there's this, conversation in the media, and I think even the Economic Freedom Fighters put
Mm,
out a whole statement alleging that SAMRO has decided to sell SAMRO House without consulting,
mm,
members.
mm.
And so where do you think that comes from?
It's obviously misinformation. It's obviously people seeking to jump onto a particular narrative that suits
Right,
particular interests. But it's all part and parcel of this campaign that we've seen in the past 3-4 weeks, right?
right,
Yes, there were conversations at the board, and I think there was documents that may or may not have been leaked to the media. I don't know, and we know where it comes from. We very clear and understand where it comes from.
right,
But the board has also said very clearly that any decision to sell needs to be canvassed with the members first. So the board understands its responsibility towards members, and we also equally understand that this particular property, the purchase of this property, also had its own issues at the time that it was purchased. So we're
right,
quite alive to bringing members into decision making that is of a material or significant nature.
right. I think perhaps there's clearly a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding or lack of knowledge on the memorandum of incorporation and how it relates to the ways in which SAMRO acquires
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
deaccessions property. What's the policy there and how does it work? So I'm a
Yeah,
member, and I'm hearing that,
yeah.
this thing is happening. How would that in a process that functions well? How would that happen? How would that happen?
So the MOI, I'm glad you're actually referencing the MOI. The MOI is very clear as to where certain responsibilities or decision-making authority lies.
Right.
But even within the context of the MOI as the sort of the grounding document, we're also mindful of the moral and ethical responsibilities that
Right.
that need to be fulfilled, in our responsibility to members. So in one instance, the MOI says that decisions of a significant nature are entrusted to the board of directors. That's why you've got a company. That's why members appoint a board of directors so that they oversee the operations and decisions of the organization. But that doesn't mean that we are closed off to the real life issues and experiences and concerns of members. So that's why it would be important then to bring members into the conversation about whether or not to alienate this particular asset. And it is an asset at the end of the day, right? It is part of the business in our asset register, but slightly differently owned by SAMRO House Holdings, and that is SAMRO NPC. So I think that distinction is also important. But be that as it may, there's a moral responsibility and obligation from the board in how it would choose to alienate a property if that decision were made at a particular point to bring members into that conversation.
But what I'm picking up, from what you're saying, and what, if you look at what people are saying on podcasts, if you look at what people are saying on social media, it seems to me that members are not clear about the process by which they get involved in the process, right? So as a member, apart from normal AGM, so you go to AGM and then issues are put on the table, and that's where you make your input. But it seems to me that people are not clear as members what ways are they able to bring their views to bear on how the organization flows. Can you take us through that? Yeah.
So I think the AGM is that primary point of connection and engagement with the members. But it's not the only point of engagement with members. For example, let's use today's session. Right, we canvass members to say, look, there's an important conversation that we need to have. Please ask your questions so that we can expatiate and respond to those questions. But some members are vocal. Some members are never shy of making their views and their points known. Right. But there are also other structures in the industry that we also engage with. There is the Music Creators of South Africa, which represents creators being composers and authors. There's also the Music Publishers Association and many others, right? So even in those formal structures and engagements that we have as an organization with broader industry bodies, we get feedback and we understand what the hot issues or topical issues might be for members. And importantly, so we take those on board. So whatever conversations are happening, concerns or comments or suggestions that members would bring to the fore, we have a responsibility to interrogate those and see how they would fit into what we're trying to achieve ultimately. So at various points of interaction and the crossroads is always, we listen to members. There's obviously the member is coming through the customer relations department, member services department. Members make their points and their concerns and their compliments, So there's multiple points of entry and engagement with the organization outside of just the formal AGM.
Right. Yeah, because what I'm picking up as I'm listening out journalistically, I'm getting the sense that there seems to be a disconnect on that question. People are unclear about, as members, to what extent do they have access to the board of directors and to the management of SAMRO, and so people then start putting out whatever issues they're putting out. But I think in terms of the building, that I'm satisfied that I think it's clear to me what's going on there, and one of the I suppose the primary issues that one gets, and I'm not a member of SAMRO because I'm not a musician, but people seem to not be clear about the issue of royalties calculations. How or what is the process used? So I'm a musician. My music is played on the radio, and then it's this. I get money in my bank account, or I don't get money in my account. For whatever reason. I think let's talk a little bit about how that process works at the most basic level. I'm in Matatiele. I've registered on the SAMRO website. I make music from my grandmother's back room on my computer, and somehow I get it into campus radio or community radio, and it's played. But I don't see some kind of money. How is that decision made? To the effect that I'm going to get some kind of payment.
Okay. So I'll try to be as simple as possible as you requested, right? Because it is actually quite technical. First and foremost, I would say to members that when you become a member of SAMRO, SAMRO operates in terms of rules, right? So there are distribution rules and the membership rules. So in the distribution rules document, which is available on the website, we actually explain how we get money in, how we determine for particular distributions. We've got about 7 distributions. So there's radio and general, there's TV, there's film, there's live, there's mobile and internet, and there is foreign. So for each one of those different categories, there would be different rates applied because the royalties that are collected are based on tariffs for the respective distribution, right? So a tariff for a private broadcaster will not be the same as a tariff for a community radio station, for example. But ultimately, when we receive the money for, let's say we receive from all the public broadcasters, right? SABC, for example, we would then determine at that point what the unit rate that needs to be applied based on the money that we have available and the number of rights holders who need to be participating in that distribution. So it's not just Percy and Annabell who are participating in the distribution. It's Percy, Annabell plus 10,000 others, give or take, right? And so that 10 rand that you receive from SABC has to be split across the participants in that distribution, right? So that's how the rules would apply. And what members need to know is that for every distribution, it will be a different rate. So you might have received, we might have applied a rate for the primary distributions, which is TV in general, particularly in December, which would be different to what you then receive if you participate in the distribution in December 2025. So it fluctuates because we might have increased the number of licensees in that particular distribution over that period. So the more licensees that we have means that the more people are paying royalties, therefore there's more money available in the pot to distribute. Where there's fewer licensees, there's less money to distribute, right? But coupled with that, and I want to segue with your permission maybe to talk about the undoc, but coupled with that is when we get information from the broadcaster or the user, the user tells us, I used Percy's song X for this particular purpose. I used it in a TV campaign. I used it in Mabandu. I used it in an ad, right? And so that also informs what the rate is and how much Percy will ultimately get. It depends. Ultimately, it's on usage.
One of the things that is at the heart of this issue, and I've been in community radio, I've been in commercial radio a little bit, and I know the difficulties that are there a little bit. But let me not answer your questions for you. Where I wanted to go through is the way in which the data is collated, so that we determine who gets to participate. Because music is played in Soshanguve community radio station, music is played at Radio 702, different levels, but you need to then get the data from them. Take me through that process of getting that data. How wholesome is it? What are the challenges there? Because that informs then who gets to participate in the money, in the distribution of the funds.
I think you've identified a very critical gap in the industry broadly, right? So the law says, the Copyright Act says that the music user is responsible for informing the licensee, the licensor, what they've used.
SAMRO.
Right? So they have to tell us what they've used and to what extent they've used that music, right? Where the gap is that we're not getting sufficient information from the user around what time, when, for how long, the duration of the usage, and the details specific to that song, right? So we're not getting comprehensive information. And we've, together with other industry partners, have looked at standardizing cue sheets. We've looked at trying to make it simple for users to just populate information. we've created a repository where we've said to users, okay, just dump the information then for us, right? So that when members come to us and say, you don't have complete information, we can go into this repository and say, oh, we remember that Soshanguve community station just put a whole lot of information on this site. So therefore, let's try to access this in that respect. But how we also get information, let alone from the broadcasters or the users, we get information from Radio Monitor, we get information from RegQ, we get information from SysNet as well, the international sort of repository of information that has to do with composers and authors and publishers. And there are various other sources that we could still also rely on. So the approach to filling in the gaps at a data level point is multi-pronged, because there's not one solution that will fully give us this comprehensive data set that we need. So we would have to find other ways to plug in the gaps as we need the information.
Right. So, and I'm gathering that that's the choke points. That's where it sits a lot of ways. What kind of, activities has SAMRO gone into to try and resolve this kind of issue historically? Because it seems to me that it's a historic issue.
Yes. So in one area, we have to rely on technology, right? The way that technology is able to assist us to fill those gaps by either it is through for example, the DSPs themselves, they would have accurate information, right? What we say to members as well is, when you notify your works, please make sure that your notification is also detailed. So even at the member level, the owner level, there's a responsibility to provide comprehensive information about the split sheet, the royalty split, and who's who in terms of the ownership of that song, right? So there's the one aspect, which is notification. There's also, at a works level, we need to have information around the metadata, what's in the industry referred to as metadata. It's the fingerprint of the song. It's the producer, the performer, the composer, and the duration of the song.
And this determines the share.
Yes. And this determines. So where we don't have that comprehensive metadata, we then have to deploy other mechanisms to help us, be it technology, be it manual interventions, be it going back to broadcasters to say, we are missing this information. Please, can you ask your teams to help us? And various other sources we would have to rely on. So as I said, it's not a single approach to filling in the gaps. It's multiple approaches. But to a great extent, it's about technology and the use of technology to help us fill in those gaps.
And the general, I don't want to say unwillingness, but the failure of people giving you information.
Yeah, you can imagine it's an administrative burden. Imagine you are a program manager at a radio station and you play music 24 hours, and then having to literally fill in every second of what you used is an administrative burden.
So we have to find a technological way to do this. Now, I'm asking this question because it segues lovely into what is probably the most misunderstood or if not the most contentious issue when it comes to SAMRO money and people's, what people feel they are owed. The issue of undoc or undocumented works. I'm going to be very basic again. What is undoc or undocumented works?
Okay. So undocumented works is when we receive money and information from the broadcaster. So the broadcaster will say, okay, I used song X, I used song Y, I used song Z, right? But in that information, it's incomplete. So when we have to run the distribution, we have to set aside information that is incomplete or not, doesn't have the detail that we require to actually help it participate in the distribution. So we would have to set that information or that works aside and say, okay, for this work, yes, you've received the money, but for this work, we don't know who the rights holders are or the complete list of rights holder. We might not know who the publisher is. We might not know the duration of how long it was used for. Because remember, I said earlier on, the rate that we would apply at that time is also informed by information around usage. right?
Right.
So the song was used for 10 seconds, for 30 seconds, for 2 minutes, or the full duration of the song, however long the song is. So when we don't have that information, you can't participate in the distribution. So we set that money aside, and we set that work that we don't have information about aside.
Right.
That sits in undocumented works. Right.
Right.
So let me stop there, because I think there's a lot more that.
Right. Yeah. I'm asking because what I'm picking up as I was scanning through conversations that are growing online and on Twitter and so on, is that it emerged that what people understand undoc to be is works that are being used, music that's being played by the broadcasters and so on, of people who are not necessarily members.
Yes.
And the broadcaster then pays for use.
Yes.
And that money then comes into SAMRO. So this is the understanding, is that one, there's works that are being paid for, but those people are not members. So then that creates, money in the bag. Secondly, there is works who, because of the defective information that you're getting from radio broadcasters, from television, from giving you information. I've used this song, but they misappropriate, the composer, or they're not giving you enough information about who that song belongs to. So then you're sitting with money that's being paid for that song, and it's sitting, and those people might be members, right? Yeah. But you don't have enough information to be able to attribute to be able to attribute the song to that. So let's talk about how that tension arises, and what are the ways in which you are working to resolve.
So you're right in that the undoc basket, let me call it that, includes members who are not SAMRO members, and these are the title in the industry is NS, non-society.
Non-society, right.
So in the undoc pot, we've got money that is for people who are not members of a society or any society. Right. It doesn't have to be SAMRO, right? And so on the one hand, when it comes to non-society members, we have a campaign where we literally hunt you down.
Right.
Right. And I want members to appreciate that this is not our money. That money that is sitting in undoc is not SAMRO's money. It's not the company's money.
Right.
It is members' money, whether you are a member or not.
It's
a liability. It's musicians' money, and it's a liability. And a liability means right. So on the one hand, when it comes to non-society composers, musicians, creators, authors, our responsibility is to literally find information as best we can within these resources that I mentioned, right? So we will go out, we will hunt you down. I've heard stories in SAMRO where staff members will be go Mogodu Monday, go Konga, right? Go Konga, go busy corner, and they'll say to somebody, DJ, SAMRO, come get your money, right? It is that real, and it is that important to us to make people know that we've actually got your money. We want to pay you out. And there's stories where somebody was sharing that there was a musician who was literally homeless, and we were sitting with about 1 million rand worth of his money. We had to knock on doors and say, please go, we will help you open a bank account. We will help you get your money, because we look for people. I mean, we work with tracers as well to help us find people, even if it's your beneficiaries. Our responsibility is to pay it out, right? So that's on the NS side. But equally so with the undoc, where there's either notification is not correct or we didn't get the correct information from the users, we have a responsibility to find and to work with members to clear that out.
Right.
So we say to members, through the SAMRO portal, you can actually go in and you can search this list of works that we don't know who they belong to. If you're a publisher, if you're a composer, if you're an author, here's a list of 30 million songs, however many there are, right? 20 million, 5,000 songs.
Right.
Please go through them. Search, do a search.
It's interesting you're saying this because I think in one of the questions that were being sent through, I think somebody said, why is the undoc list not available online as a living document so that we as members can go and identify our own works and say, okay, no, I see this song
Yes.
is in undoc. It's actually my songs.
Yes.
Are you getting people doing that?
We encourage members to do that. So I think
Right.
if members may not know now that that is available, I want to confirm that is available.
Right.
And I think from the 2023 report and the forensic, one of the improvements that we had to do to our system, we actually closed it temporarily after the forensic and the fraud allegations came up. And we cleaned it up to extent that there's a greater degree of verification and validation. So I can't just go in and pick and choose now, this one I think is mine, whatever. But now there is a greater degree of a fiduciary layer attached to that claim from our side.
Right.
Because we agree and acknowledge that our controls were they were lacking in terms of what we needed to do to make sure that those claims were valid. But members, please go into the portal. Please search your work. You can either search it by name, the work name, or by your name. And the system will actually even make suggestions about, we know that you've written these kind of songs. This is your repertoire. This is your catalog. Maybe this might match. Tell us if it's yours or not. So the system can also prompt a member in terms of what is available from this schedule, and it is a live document.
I'm imagining also this issue of badly spelled names.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I remember when we were growing up, the phone book, I've just dated myself, the phone book would have, you know, various versions of the same name, you know, spelled differently. So as an issue that people should, as they search through this, should be mindful of that, of the various spellings that might have been defective from where the information was coming
and as you said, that I think we part of the new system replacement that we've been under that we've been on a path with for the past 3-4 years is around data cleaning, data integrity, and making sure that our data is, you know, getting rid of the duplications, we're getting rid of the misspelled names, and also working with members to confirm that the data is correct.
It's correct. You know? So cleaning it up, and I think that's a big issue going forward. I think go to the. Let's talk about, you know, people are saying, you know, the word slush fund, the word slush fund, you know, is another word that's being used to refer to the money that's in you know, the undoc bracket. So there's a conversation around the 3-year issue that money comes in, sits in the slush fund, and after 3 years, this money then is, you know, is distributed to the record companies. Oh, that's what people are saying, you know. Let's talk about what happens, you know. So you've collected all you know, money related to these undocumented works. You can't find who the people are, so you're unable to pay people. What happens? What happens? Yeah.
So remember, this is a debt, right? We owe somebody.
Yeah.
Right. And in terms of where the 3 years comes from, we've applied a general rule which is related to the Prescription Act that says after 3 years, that debt prescribes. Right. So within that 3-year period, we will do whatever it takes to find the information around the works or the member. That's our responsibility. After 3 years, if all these efforts have failed and if members haven't come forward to say, okay, that one I claim, it's mine, right? That money that was sitting for that work will then move back. So it's currently sitting in the balance sheet of the organization. There was a question that was around the balance sheet. It sits in the balance sheet. After 3 years, we then recognize it as income. And that income will then go towards the next distribution. So the distributable revenue that we've set aside, right? So what does that mean? It means that we know that that money came from distribution near radio or distribution near TV or distribution near live. We know where that money came from. We know that.
Right.
So when we assign or recognize it as income, it goes back into the same category.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It doesn't go into just something.
Yeah.
It goes back from whence it comes. Where does it come from? It comes from life. We then recognize it as income in the live distribution. Right?
Right.
And then we pay it out for the rights holders based on usage in that distribution.
Right.
So it goes back to members.
Right. So it's not a slush fund where if SAMRO feels the building needs new windows, you go into the slush fund, or we feel like, no man, hey, the chairs that we've been using in the office are a bit old then, but we have that slush fund. Can we dip in there? Because that's the impression that people are having in
I
the
want
social
to
media.
assure members,
Right.
SAMRO is a legitimate company.
Right.
SAMRO is not a fly-by-night company.
Right. Right.
There are rules that govern how we operate, not only at the South African level, legislative level, but also at the international level. What do I mean by that? So SAMRO is a member of the International Federation of Collecting Societies, right? And that body, think of the UN, right? That body is the UN of all these collecting societies. And there are professional rules that say, this is how you distribute. This is how you recognize members. This is how you hold money. This is how you take what is for admin fee. This is how you take for what is cultural and social in terms of CSI.
Right.
So even at the local country level, but even at the international level.
Right.
And we are audited at the local level, obviously, but at the international level, they also used to audit their members as to are you doing what you're supposed to do in terms of the rules that you are choosing to abide by. Right. So there is no tjhelete e dutseng fela e re sa tsebeng gore ke eng. Therefore, buy a chair, buy a painting. No. Right. And it's important for members to understand that the part of the responsibility of the board and management's responsibility is to clear that liability. Right.
So I think one of the confusions is how the 3 years comes about. The prescription. It is prescribed by the Act.
Yes.
Right. It's not a decision of the board.
No.
It's not a decision of the executive.
No.
Because that's what I was picking up while I was listening through what people are saying and thinking. That SAMRO has decided that after 3 years we're taking your money and then we're doing this with it.
No.
What happens to that money is a decision that's based
in law.
In law.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
But maybe just to also add, Percy, that even with the prescription aspect, right? What I said earlier on is we don't want to carry the debt.
Right.
Skoloto can't just year in, year be carrying this debt, because that creates a liability, as I said, right?
Right.
No business wants to carry liabilities. There's no business that wants Dikoloto to roll over without putting in measures and interventions to deal with those debt. So the prescription application was to help us to reduce the liability. But that liability is to our members. We say this, the liability is to members. So it doesn't feature in what SAMRO would then have as its operation expenses. It still sits within what needs to go back to members.
Right, like in terms of its balance.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. Now, this I think dovetails nicely into the next issue, because discrepancies that were picked up in terms of the misattributions of songs.
Yes.
So there was an issue around the fact that because there were works that were sitting in undocs unclaimed year on year, and so that there was nefarious activity about certain people claiming those works that were not theirs. And as a result, there was a forensic investigation report that was commissioned. Let's start with the basics again. Who commissioned the forensic report and why?
Okay. The board commissioned the forensic report.
SAMRO board?
Yes.
Right.
In 2022. So obviously there was activity in the portal, the Undoc portal, where members were claiming money, claiming. And what had transpired was that management picked up on an irregular claim, something that didn't quite follow normal procedure, normal controls. And they flagged this one. This is the 3.4. They flagged, yes, 3.4 million that was claimed. This was flagged as there's something uncertain about this. And then what management did, rightly so, is they reported it to the board to say, you know what, we are picking up certain patterns of behavior in when these claims are done, but there's also the 3.4. Please we are raising it to you because it's a risk, right? And then the board said, with what you're reporting to us, we see that there is probably a reason. There's reason for us to institute this forensic report. Let me give an example. The report that was presented to members said that there were certain claims that were happening, right? Like ungodly hours, right? So there were patterns of some claims that were at very odd hours, not normal business hours. There were claims that were, Annabell goes in and claims a song, Yasizulu, Yasekhoa, Afrikaans, Tsonga, Swahili as her songs, right?
Very prolific.
I'm such a writer, right? And Annabell can claim this catalog as hers. So those things is what flagged. And yes, there were also whistleblowers, right? There were some members who came forward and said, you know what, I actually think that what I'm receiving doesn't belong to me. Because when I talk to my publisher, sub-publisher, whoever is administrating my catalog, I'm picking up something that is not correct. So all of that information was the catalyst for why the board said, okay, stop. Really, it's a risk, because not only are rightful rights holders not benefiting from what should be theirs, but there's a proliferation. Clearly, there is now a pattern of behavior that is grossly irregular and unfair,
right,
in the way that these claims are being submitted and paid out. So let's stop the portal. That's what initiated the forensic audit.
Right. What did it find, and what has been done?
So it found the example that I just referred, that there were certain members that were claiming irregularly works that weren't theirs. There was an employee, right? It takes two to commit fraud. Right. There was an employee at SAMRO who was also helping certain members, publishers and composer members, to claim unlawfully works, right? So this was seen as in a sense, a free-for-all, unjustly so, right?
Right.
It found that in one instance, it found that, so of the 60 million, and this is where the 60 million comes from.
Right.
Of the 60 million that had been claimed, only 30 million was paid. So half of that was actually paid out by SAMRO. Right. But the amount that was determined by the forensic to have been irregular, incorrect, unlawful was the 3.4.
So about 50% of the.
So 50% was paid of what was claimed,
because it was found that it's okay to pay that.
In some instances, SAMRO picked up a claim, said no, we're not paying this. So there was from our own internal checks and balances, we were able to not proceed with the claims because we picked up that they were incorrect.
Right.
And so what we would then do is say to the member, oh, you've made for this claim. In order for us to validate this claim, provide this proof. Right. Show us that you own the song, whatever it is. And I think at that time we had a list of about 15 different items that would suffice, that we needed to satisfy ourselves, right? So there was a long list of provide this information, and so that was the validation and the verification process. Right. And we still have that in place, right?
Right.
So it found that in some instances, those controls were lacking, therefore payments were made. But it didn't say that the 30 million that was paid was unlawful, was incorrect.
Right.
The report said the 3.4 was what was incorrect or unlawful.
But this was the money that you had not paid anyway.
Yes.
You had ring-fenced.
So we saved the 30 million.
Right. Okay. Yes. Right. Because what became an issue that I was picking up again, as I was scanning the social media and conversations out there by members and other interested parties, was that this money that's missing. So there's no money that's
There's no money that's missing.
there's a 60 million rands that was, claimed, 50% of which was found to be okay to pay out,
Yes.
and that was
Yes.
paid out.
Yes.
About 50% of it
Yes.
was a bit dodgy, and you ring fence it and kept it aside, as per the recommendations of the investigation, the forensic report. Now, let's talk about members' access to the forensic report, because that's another thing that people are discussing. That people seem to be feeling a bit uneasy about their access to it. Talk to me about which part of it has been made public, which part of it has not been made public, and why.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to 2022 when the sort of the initiation of the process to report from management to report to the board happened. There is a piece of legislation called PRECA, the Prevention of Corrupt Activities, of Criminal and Corrupt Activities Act, right? PRECA. And PRECA says anybody who comes into information about possible criminal activities or fraud needs to report, and there's a threshold. So it says anything above 100,000 rand, you need to report to the police.
Right.
Your first course of action, whether or not your board says do a forensic or not, you still need to report, right? So at that time, SAMRO opened a case to say this is what's come to our knowledge. This is the information that we have. Yes, we're going to do a forensic, but the law says we have to open a case. We opened a case at Hillbrow Police Station, right? So there is an ongoing criminal investigation as I speak now. The reason why, when the report came out and when we presented it to members firstly we presented it in December 2023 at the AGM, and it was presented by the forensic auditor himself.
Right.
And we're very clear about the expert being present to present it to the member. This was post the AGM. Because we didn't want to be able, what do I know about forensic auditing? I know nothing about forensic auditing. So it was important that members hear from the expert as to process, methodology, findings, and recommendations, right? So we reported at the AGM, and we said to members, what the board had also decided is, we are not in the business of killing businesses. So member, you know that you took money that doesn't belong to you. We are giving you an opportunity to pay back the money, right? Do the right thing, pay back the money, So to get in parallel with the criminal case, we then instituted civil proceedings. So we would go to members and say, if you can't prove it, pay for it. If you can't prove it, pay for it. And that has been the process.
Right.
In 2024, we said to members, dear members, initially there was a request for access into the forensic. Because now we've handed the matter over to SAPS, we've opened a case. The investigating officer who's handling the case said to us in the Hawk, said, guys, we advise you not to release the report because we're worried about implications to our investigation. I get now you've come forward and you've said, we are handing it over to you. So you've handed it over to us. Step back. Don't interfere. Don't want to be releasing reports and now you are taking over the responsibility.
Right.
So we were advised, allow the criminal process to run its course. I can't say it's a year, I can't say it'll be 10 years.
Right.
Allow the process to run its course. When the NPA or the Hawks, whatever their internal processes are as to whether or not we are going to charge or not charge, we will then let you know and you can release it to members, right? We've said to members, we know that we have to release the report. We are not shying away from that responsibility because members want to know and members want to hold each other accountable.
Right.
And rightly so, But we've said for purposes of us being guided, we are not criminologists. We are not in the space of criminal investigating. So let's allow the criminal investigation to run its course. And then at the right time, we will release the report. And that is the only reason why we asked members and we pleaded with them to allow this process to run its course. And at the right time, when we advised, we will release the report.
It seems to me that members feel a bit out at sea with it. It seems to me that people feel, the impression that this has created is that people feel like they are being denied access to information. What are the ways in which SAMRO has taken members into confidence about this process, for instance?
Right. I think from the onset, when the board initiated the investigation, the board initiated it in order to demonstrate its zero tolerance towards fraud, and the board communicated that to members. Right. At the 2023 post AGM meeting, the expert took the members through it. And I think in the way that we've communicated the message to members and various communications post just the AGM, where we've said to members, dear members, please know that the investigation is complete. The report the findings will be presented at the AGM. But as far as is possible, this is also what we've done, because there's responsibility on management. We have improved in terms of the member code of conduct. We have we've initiated a fraud unit in the organization, because we are dealing with huge volumes of data. We are dealing with huge volumes of money, the funds that are in our custody. So we would be ill-advised to not focus on the fraud prevention strategies.
Right. Take me through these and the fraud, the team at least that's working on it, how it's constituted, because people might feel, why are criminally accused investigating themselves?
So we're not investigating ourselves. So normally, and maybe let me help members understand this. So normally in an audit, general audit, whether it's forensic or standard audit, the audit report would say you are found wanting, your governance is not, improve on this, improve on the control around how you validate claims, improve on making sure that your KYC, your customer processes and protocols are correct. How do you verify that Percy is actually Percy and Percy is not representing somebody else, right? So an audit will give you a sense of where you've got weaknesses in what are called internal controls. Right? And those internal controls could either be improve on your policy, improve on your standard operating procedures, improve on delegation of authority. So it can't just be the CFO who uploads and who authorizes. So there has to be segregation, right? So your audit will tell you where you are weak. And audits are important because they help you become better. So in this instance, the forensic audit said, improve internal controls. The forensic audit said, you might need to actually look at the MOI, because on one instance, you've got the constitution of the board is that you've got members who are represented on the board, and there may be conflicts of interest. So how are you going to manage conflicts of interest at a governance level? Right. So the recommendation from the forensic said, look into these things, where part of why you landed up with these kind of issues is because we as auditors are saying this is not in keeping with general practice around, board and board representation, and you would want industry experts who are members, either perceived, either real, or other potential conflicts of interest, right? And so we have worked since the forensic report came out to improve on those areas where we were said, you are weak in this, you are weak in that, you are weak in this, you are weak in that. The fraud unit that you mentioned, for what has come to my attention is that SAMRO has never had a risk view to the business. So we've instituted a fraud risk unit where we've got an auditor, somebody with an auditing experience who's also a forensic auditor in their profession, who's accredited with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, the international body. And so she's overseeing this particular unit. What we've also done is rescoped the way in which the business is dealing with issues of quality control. Checking of data, verifying data. As I mentioned earlier on, that our system has been improved to the extent that we're now able to read data using technology, obviously, to pick up anomalies in payments, in distributions. So last year, Annabell, you were earning 1,000 Rand. Now you're jumping to 1 million, and you've got the same works, right? So those kind of red flags are being deployed internally to make sure that we are not found wanting. We were found wanting. So we beefed up risk management to the extent that it helps us be a bit more preventative and less responsive.
Right. Okay. Now I want to get into the other issue that has been coming up in the media. It seems to me there's a lot of disputes. There's a lot of contentions. That has to do with SAMRO in relationship to its members and service providers. An issue. I mean, there's the issue with a service provider, one rights management. I'd like for us to take time to ventilate what the issues are. If I'm a member and I'm hearing that my organization has had a relationship with a particular service provider, and now there's a dispute. I want to understand exactly what happened, and whether or not the people managing my organization are acting in good faith and they're right on this issue. Take me through the relationship and how it begins between SAMRO and an organization, One Rights Management, and Mr. Owen Grove.
It's a long history, but let's go there. Okay, let's go there. So I started at SAMRO in 2023,
right?
1st of January, and from what I can understand, the SAMRO has been having conversations with Owen as far back as probably 2018, 2017.
Right.
Give a few months, and the basis or premise of that engagement had been to provide a service to SAMRO regarding these gaps that I mentioned in data, right? So it was SAMRO knows that we've got weaknesses when it comes to the completion of data, either from the broadcaster or from the member, right? But the focus of the engagement with the service provider, with Owen, was to be very niche in the view of data that speaks to certain genres. Right? Those genres were, and we call them marginalized genres. So Mbube, Maskandi, Stratamea, Afro, all the sort of non-mainstream music, right? And so the intention was, he had propositioned or said to SAMRO, I can actually help you because I'm a member and I understand why this flow of money gets stuck at some point, right? And he's got his own partners who are the data source for him, right? And his proposal or proposition to SAMRO was very specific around, it is about music monitoring. So broadly, music monitoring is the tools that we would use to either physically listen or get data to be able to close these gaps in the data, right? So his proposition was, guys, I've got this proposal. I can help you do this. I can help you do this because I'm also a member. I understand where these gaps are, right? And long story short, from the 2017, whenever he came through the SAMRO doors, to 2022, and even with my predecessors, there was always a constant conversation around what he was proposing to SAMRO as being a service provider. And maybe let me issue a disclaimer. The board had identified I think a worthwhile initiative around procurement, where if you're a member of SAMRO and you've got a business, SAMRO members have got businesses, right? If this business can provide a service to SAMRO, the door is open. But you'd obviously have to follow processes and whatever else, right? So it was about providing access for members to SAMRO procurement spend. Whatever procurement bucket was, if you've got a business, we use caterers who are members, we use et cetera, cleaners, whatever you do, you've got a business. If we need that service, you can have access, right? So this was also in keeping with that principle and that philosophy about members having access to procurement spend. So in 2022, there was then a decision to initiate a pilot. And my predecessor had written to him, Mark had written to him to say, we agreed to the point that we are at in this conversation, that we want to give you an opportunity. We want to test and see whether or not what you're saying is valid. We can close the gap. So prove to us that you can actually do this work, right? So that's how then that happened. In 2023, when I came in, we then signed a pilot project, for this concept, for this 3-month initial, let's test.
Right.
Can you give us just 3 months on a very small scale? Give us data for this period, enrich the data, does it close the gap? That was how this relationship with the supplier then began. Yeah.
Right. And what happened? What happened? Because so there's a proposal, there's an understanding or a contract,
Yes.
pilot contract that says 3 months.
Yes.
He comes in,
Yes.
or the company comes in,
yes,
to provide a service.
Yes.
What was found? Was the service satisfactory?
Yes.
And then it was extended.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
For how long?
So in total, there were 4 contracts that
Right.
from 2023 to the one that's just concluded, right?
Right.
The first one was the pilot. It was 3 months. The second one was also what was called a bulk agreement, which was for a particular period. I think this one was 9 months.
Right.
The third one was also about, I think, 9-10 months, if I'm not mistaken. Right. The last one was for a year. So the way that the data request would work is, although we're contracting you for, let's say, 1st of April to end of March, 1st of April to end of June, right? That's right. 3 months. But we're going to ask you for data that might be historical.
Right.
We're not asking you for data for today.
Right.
We want data
for the area
yes, so it's a specific data period.
Also, you say we have the contract is a relationship contract, not a scope of work. It says that we have a relationship with you for 3 months. In these 3 months, we have gaps in at this
in this particular period,
and we need you to go into those periods. But explain to me. I mean, if in the most basic sense, what actually that entails. Does that mean One Right Music goes to Matatiele, goes to Soshanguve, to the radio stations to go clean up the data and get the data? What exactly is the service?
So One Rights Management is in partnership with the data provider, with a third party. So there's a third party in this relationship.
Right.
So he buys the data from this third party. Right? He buys data from the third party. He enhances the data, filters the data, cleans the data to be able to respond to what SAMRO is asking for.
Right.
So you can imagine you get data that's got everything from Joburg to Cape Town. Right. But we actually need the Bloemfontein point, we need the Caledon point, and we need that point. So he would just give us that point that we needed in the midst of all this data that he's got access to. He's got access to data.
Yeah, to say we're not sure. We have Maskande music that's being played. We have a sense that Maskande music is being played because of the information we're getting.
Yes.
But it's unclear.
Yes. Who, what, where, duration.
Because it's growing the basket in Undocumented.
Exactly. Spot on. Right. So that metadata that we mentioned when we started the conversation is what he was helping us to plug into. Right. But for those specific marginalized genres that we'd identified, these are the genres that you are going to provide the service for these radio stations. So it's not open-ended. It's not every user, wherever they might be. No.
Right.
It's broadcast specific.
Can you explain to me why there's a discrepancy in terms of difficulty of getting the data between, say, hip hop in Matatiele being played versus Maskande being played in the very same place? I mean, I'm asking as a mobile. Yeah.
I think it's a combination of factors. I think one is notification factors. As I said, you go into a studio, you don't properly notify your works. It's that.
Right.
It's a cue sheet issue. So the program manager at the local radio station is not filling the cue sheet properly.
Right.
So they're not saying time, duration, what it was used for, whether there's a flighting code, whether there's no flighting code. Right. So those are the primary reasons why there would be gaps that lead to what ultimately sits in undoc. Right? So his responsibility, the service that we were procuring, was to help us close those gaps, because we know that part of our membership base is members who are not necessarily getting royalties, but we know that their music is being paid because this information doesn't quite exist or it's inaccurate, right? So we wanted to have a particular focus on those members in the organization who are operating in those genres to be able to get better payout, better royalties, more royalties, increase their royalties.
Be able to pay. Now, to the degree that you were happy with the service provider, what then happens that determines that, okay, we are fine now? So in other words, to the extent that he's been able to provide a very important service and plugging this gap, does his departure prejudice SAMRO's ability to continue plugging that gap?
Not necessarily, because it's not a unique service, right? It's not unique. I think there are new technologies that come on stream every single day that we would have to look at and consider and engage with. It's not unique in that there's nobody doing it. You know, remember I think the niche aspect of it was only genre specific. But when I said that he's got access to data, that data has got everything. That data has got everything. It's got coming from somebody. But he was exercising a particular eye just to these genres that we were looking for. Right. So that data exists. There are many other providers who offer that data. Right.
So would I be right to understand you to say that in the process that during the time while he was supplying the service, SAMRO has developed an ability to mine this data for itself? So or maybe another way of asking, the question, maybe I'm going, two steps ahead. Why was the contract ended?
Okay, very simple. So the fourth contract was for we signed it for the period 1st of July 2024 to 30th of June 2025, right? So that was the contract period. The data period was the 1st of January 2024 to the 31st of December 2024. Right. At the end of sort of when we came back beginning of the year, he had given us 12 months worth of data. Right. He'd given us 12 months of data. We had paid up to 11 months worth of contract obligation. Right. So we owed 1 month. Right. So in essence, he's met the deliverables of the project. You've delivered what you said to client you will deliver. Right. It might be that the term is slightly different, but you've delivered. You've fulfilled your responsibility. Client has fulfilled their responsibility. Yeah. You've given us what we paid. You've given us what we paid for, right? I then wrote to him in February to say, okay, you have actually fulfilled your obligations to the contract. We owe you 1 month of payment for the contract period. After we pay you that, we've actually exhausted the contract budget. So I don't have any other money to pay you just for now for January to July, because for January to June of the calendar year, because the contract is still got the 6 months remaining. Right? So contract term was still remaining. But actually you've delivered service, we've paid you value. Right. So there's a discrepancy between the service requested and the amount of time that we had allocated, service time that we've allocated for you. So actually you've overperformed. You've overperformed because you delivered before contract end date. Right. So what is the responsibility then on management? The responsibility on management in terms of the contract management process is to say to supplier, dear supplier, thank you very much. Our relationship is concluded because you've delivered your service. There's nothing outstanding from you. And we know that there's one invoice outstanding. Please submit invoice. within 30 days it will be paid.
Right. Was there an expectation that there would be invoices for these other months?
No.
All right.
Why would there be expectation for invoicing? Because we haven't asked you for any other data. We've exhausted contract budget. You've delivered what we needed.
Perfect.
There was no expectation. And we're very clear about dealing with that question.
Right. Now there's the issue of access to office, which I picked up from the Sunday World story. Yes. Right, that there's a sense that what an eviction notice.
Yes.
How do we get to a point where we are issuing eviction notices?
Okay, so part of this fourth contract, the final contract 3 and contract 4, we had said to the company, you know what? As opposed to you charging us rental, let's remove that cost for you and for us. Let's remove that cost.
We have space for you.
We have space for you. But so we'll accommodate you for free. That space is incumbent upon this contract. Mm-hmm. So it's not space forever and a day. It's not space because we've got nothing better to do. It's space which is in keeping with our supply development obligations. You're a supplier, you're an emerging supplier in the space of music recognition, music technology, data management. We want to support black suppliers, right? Black businesses in this sector that are doing that particular, that are providing that particular service. So we will release you of the responsibility of paying rent or paying rent somewhere else because we want you to service us.
Right.
We want you to service us because you've proved that you can service us.
Right.
So for the term of contract 3, it's attached to lease. Contract 4, it's attached to lease. But when the contract, right, that concluded, automatically means that the lease agreement concludes. Automatically.
Right. I'm gathering from reading what's in the media that there's a bit of acrimony and there was an expectation that the tenure would either be renegotiated to through some kind of member leniency or take me through that misunderstanding and how it accrues to the extent that in our understanding we're giving you these offices on the basis that you would be doing this work, but you're no longer doing this work, therefore we have no legal reason to give you access to the office. Was there a request to continue use the office made? Was there a request made to continue using the office for the business? And so then how does the...
Okay, so let's speak to the acrimony.
Yeah, the acrimony.
The last Sunday World article said SAMRO CEO and Owen are fighting over contract or something like that. And I'm actually going to use this opportunity to actually call what this is and to name it.
Right.
This is nothing but a member who's bullied his way into contract, bullied his way to deeming himself indispensable to this organization, to deeming himself irreplaceable to this organization. So much so that what has aggravated the relationship negatively is because of who he is.
What do you mean by that?
And who he is a bully. And who he is abusive to the greatest extreme at a corporate level, at a business to business level. Right, and I'll give you an example where the needle broke the camel's back. Right, we signed the contract in September 2024 for this contract number 4.
Right,
we signed the contract. It was fine, and then around October, I think there was some article in some publication called Scroller Africa that intimated allegations about the chairperson of the board. He was meant to have a 20 million rand tender, and chairperson did this or the other thing. and now, you know, he's what's the word I'm looking for? He's not going to get access now to this tender, right, anymore. At that time, I wrote to him, and the article quotes him as saying, no, the parties will find each other, right? So I then wrote him and I said, I've taken note of your comment where you are quoted as saying that we will find each other. I want to make it very clear that, one, you didn't come into SAMRO through a tender. So there's no tender relationship that opened this access to the service for you too. There's no 20 million rand or 3-year contract, right? So it's my responsibility to clarify whatever expectation or false information that might exist, so that it doesn't create expectation. If I don't clarify it to you as a supplier, then you're going to come back and say, but, right? And I know, I've come to know how this person operates, right? We then had a back and forth between our legal team, his legal team, and then eventually his legal team said, please can we suggest that we meet to clear the air, right? We agreed to that. We said, no problem, we will meet. On the 12th of December, we have a meeting at 9 o'clock. It's CEO, CFO, COO, and our GM of legal. 3 executives and a senior member of staff meeting with a supplier.
Right.
Right? His legal representative is late. When we start the meeting at 9, we say, 10 o'clock, we put another obligation. So if your representative is not here by 10, unfortunately, we have to cut this meeting. 9 o'clock, 9:15, 9:30, his representative comes, I think at about 20 to 10, 10:15, right? In this meeting, what is the issue? No, the issue is past contracts. You guys owe me this, blah, 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 blah. So we say, you know what? We're not going to have time to exhaust your issues in this meeting because we have to leave. Your representative is late. So, but to move things further along, please, through your representative, you've got somebody on record.
Got a lawyer.
Ask him to put your issues in writing and we will respond. We leave the meeting. I promise you at about an hour, 2 hours later after that meeting, what does Owen do? He writes to the chairperson of the board and says, the GM legal is irresponsible, the department is falling apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my representative came here, who's going to pay for my representative, right? The GM legal response to say, you invited your representative, we're not going to pay for your representative, but please stop it with the charade. This is normal, this is everyday life with Owen. This is everyday life, right? So she cautions him about, please can you stop? I then write to him and I say, you know, actually, I'm going to call you out on this constant belief that whenever we as management or myself as the most senior person in this organization have a disagreement with you, your first port of call is to write to the chairperson. I'm not accepting that. I'm not accepting it because you've had the benefit of 3. It doesn't happen, Percy, where 3 executives would meet with the supplier. Right? So I'm actually calling you out and saying, I'm not having this anymore. This is not the first time we've done it, and this has become a pattern.
Has the request for the issues to be ventilated through the lawyer, that list, has it arrived?
No, till today. It never did.
All right.
And what transpired after that? This was the 12th of December. I want to read a message from Owen, right? He then writes to me and says, on that day, I blocked him on that day. He says 2 things. He says, I know you and the chair have become very close. If you don't take Chola out, the GM legal, we will take you and the chair out soon. Right? That's the first one. The second one he says is, Sbongi tried me on for years, but she's out of SAPC now. You are the chair's puppet. You are a hypocrite. This is all on the 12th of December.
Chair meaning the
chairperson of the board.
Right.
Sbongi, I'm assuming to be, he had an issue with Ukhozi FM station manager, Sbongi, I don't know what her name is. You can go Google it. It's out there. But this is who this supplier is, who's a member.
Right.
And we've cautioned him repeatedly to say, please wear different hats. Your hat as a member is a member. Your hat as a supplier is a different hat. Right? But when you conflate these two, because you think as a member you've got access to the board, to write every second day, every third day to the board, writing to everybody, anything, whatever is on your mind, you just spew it out. It's not acceptable.
Yeah. Annabell, what I'm not getting that I think would help members who are with us now is that if the claim is I was contracted to supply a particular key service, plugging the gaps, and SAMRO was happy with the service I was providing. At the certain point, SAMRO feels it no longer needs my service. Let's deal with how that decision was made and whether or not that gap is now being filled. I'm asking because if people are feeling or if the impression that's being made is that he is being the contract is being unfairly discontinued, whilst the problem he was solving members, benefited members, and now with his departure, which would be seen to be unfair, members are now left poorer for it. Let's deal with that tension.
Percy, I want to, before I respond to that, I want to say that in the letter that terminated the contract, right? The letter was in reference to a contract. The letter was not future prospecting. The letter did not say you will never have opportunity to SAMRO ever again. Right? But to demonstrate where I strongly believe the sort of the popo hit the fan. Owen interpreted that to mean forever and a day. He's not. The letter was very specific around, we've reached the end of this contract. So let's close this contract. SAMRO, in part of its service delivery responsibility, is constantly looking for new technologies. Either we look at it internally or we outsource it. But we will, and as I said, if you remember earlier on, I said, we've come to understand that our approach to music monitoring is not singular. So there's not one solution. We have to employ and deploy different solutions, right? And we know that because in as much as we've spoken and scoured the length and breadth of this earth for solutions, not one person has said this solution addresses all these things that all CMOs have to deal with. So CMOs generally will use different solutions for different requirements, right? So I know that going forward and how we see the music monitoring program, we would need services across the spectrum, right? But as we look at music monitoring, it's no longer about just niche. It has to be about the whole. Because we don't want to just today pay focus to the marginalized genres. We have to pay focus to all genres. So that all members can benefit from whatever tools that we deploy across the whole repertoire.
But I'm gathering that Mapiano do not have a problem of gaps.
So Mapiano was in that list.
Surprisingly.
I'm just surprisingly.
The point I'm trying to make is there are genres that don't have problems. So you are bringing him in to specifically go towards
a specific
focus because that specific focus has a need. Now then the question then becomes, because the budget is finished, we're going to have to let you go conclude this relationship. What was happening in that December till June, in terms of your ability to to gather that data.
Look, so one of the things that I mentioned a bit earlier on was the relationships that we've developed and continue to develop with production houses. Relationship that we've continued to develop with the SAPC specifically. So SAPC has got, they've just deployed, as I understand, a tool called iMonitor, which is around cue sheet population. And we've said to the SAPC, we realize that you've got shortcomings in the way that you submit cue sheets to us.
Right.
Can we do a plug and play where we actually plug into your system and get the source data that we need? Right? So that's one of the areas that we're looking at, because we know that a lot of the times it's actually the broadcaster, and we know what's the cause of undoc. It's largely TV, adverts, it's largely production music, right? And it's largely the campaigns. So either Capitec Bank will have a campaign on radio, and so those kind of things. We know we know what the focus is, right? So we've said to the SABC, we've got a symbiotic relationship. Let us plug into your system so that we can get this data. We've had, for example, engagements with the Advertising Communications Association of South Africa, where we've said, can we get at the initiation stage of you getting the sync rights for music? Please tell us, when you send the what do they call it? What is that document called? The flighting code. Right. When you send SABC the flighting codes, give us that information as well. So that when SABC gives us the cue sheet and there's no information around flighting codes, we know that we've got this access. Right. We've even said to the broadcasting, the National Association of Broadcasters, please can all the broadcasters dump your music, your data, your cue sheets into this repository that I mentioned earlier on. So there is a wide spectrum of initiatives that we strongly know and believe will help us fill this gap. As I said, the service that Owen was providing was not unique, right? The information is there, right? He was simply enhancing the information for us. Right.
That makes sense. Now, I mean, part of the conversation is this idea of members' access to the building as a resource that they feel they own. I mean, one of the other issues that came up as I was watching through what's going on online with members' grievances is a particular member who wanted to host a particular event, press conference, right? And the feeling was that he was denied access to a building that he owns as a member. Take me through what happened there and what the misgivings are, as you understand them.
I'm going to say what I said earlier.
I'm saying this because it feels, the impression that I'm getting as a non-member watching it is that members of SAMRO feel they are entitled to have access to the building or to resources that SAMRO own as and when they need it, and they're able to request them, in order to use them and so on. And in this particular case, a member was feeling that they had made a legitimate request, and that legitimate request was declined.
Let's talk about how that request was made, right? There are organizations that have got processes and protocols, and there's governance in place. You cannot not have a system of governance in an organization, otherwise it creates anarchy, right? So Percy will decide today I want to just come in, and then I've got access, I must just come in because I'm a member. No. There's a process to request use of anything.
Right.
You want to use Mapedi Hole Como Middlelands, you go to the council, you say, I'd like to book it. You get permission, yes or no, right? In this instance, what the member in question did was he advertised use of SAMRO building, right? I think it was let's say a week before the event was meant to happen. It was already out there. When did he ask officially SAMRO for use of the building? He asked SAMRO on the Wednesday before the event is supposed to take place. Surely that can't be correct.
Yeah.
Surely that can't be correct. You do not, you have to book. You're in the music industry. Promoters do what? They book a venue first. You book a space first. You book your team first. You find out, are they there? Are they not there? Is the space available? Is it not? Before you advertise it. So by advertising it, you are actually holding the organization to ransom that they can't say no.
Right.
Now they can't say no, because if they say no, that means that they are either hiding something or they can't. But from a health and safety perspective, and this is what we said to the member, right? One, it was going to be on a holiday. Two, the health and safety requirements, the auditorium downstairs is for use of AGM member-related events. It's not a public space. It's not, we don't rent it out. It's not anybody can just come in and book it and then, no. That's not what the auditorium is for. The auditorium is for, it's convenient for the purposes of running SAMRO business as it relates to members to have the auditorium. It is not we do not hire the auditorium out. We do not allow just general access because there's also aspects of insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are costs. If you want to use the building, that means somebody must be paid overtime to come oversee. There must be security. So there's a whole host of things around managing spaces of that nature. That's why we do, there's JOC. There is JOC. You're going to have a crowd. There are rules, there are bylaws around the permissions that you need to seek and secure first, right? As part of the venue confirmation process. But you cannot expect SAMRO to not run as a professional organization because you're a member. Because then what are we saying? Then it's a free for all.
Right. So the member advertises. SAMRO sees that there's this advert saying that we're hosting this thing. What then happens?
No, it's not our business because we haven't been notified. We haven't been requested. We wait until the formal request comes.
Right. The formal request comes
on the Wednesday.
On the Wednesday.
And the team that's responsible for managing the auditorium promptly responds. They have a conversation with the convener of that body and say to him, these are the reasons why we're going to decline you. They have a conversation and then he puts it in writing. So it was a very speedy response as well. So we didn't unduly delay, the response. No. Right? Because we understood that at least he might have opportunity to seek space elsewhere.
Right. This is very interesting. Now, I mean, I know that we had asked members who invariably have been watching us to prepare questions, because I know that people have what they call it, issues that they want to raise. So I'm going to ask for help to have the questions brought to us, and then we'll ventilate them as and when they come. I mean, I had sort of taken time to look at some of those ones that were coming through, but I think many of them we will actually just.
There is one that while we wait for the questions that I want to maybe just reflect upon. There was a question yesterday about whether or not there actually is a court case around the 60 million rand.
Right.
Because there is a claim that the reason why the contract was cancelled was because Owen is taking SAMRO to court for the 60 million rand and that he's a whistleblower. So I do think I want to just use the time to address that, right?
Right.
So we've dealt with the forensic and the 60 million, right? We've dealt with that. It is illogical to think that he would be claiming himself to be a whistleblower around information that's already been publicly disclosed and informed to members since 2023, right? The forensic auditors explained what that 60 million was, right? I know, and I've seen screenshots, and by the way, this has been a deliberate campaign. Since if you don't take Chola out, we will take you out and the chairperson. This has been a deliberate campaign.
Right.
Because we then went to court. We've been in court with Owen for 3 things. We've been in court around the cancellation of the contract. We've been and he initiated it on an urgent basis, and it was struck off the roll because it was deemed not to be urgent, and it was struck off the roll with costs that he had to pay. We've been in court with Owen regarding the lease agreement and termination of the lease, and I'll get to why that lease was cancelled immediately.
Right.
So we'd said that in February when we issued the notice, we said we're giving you 1 month's notice for both contract and for lease. On the 7th of February, the 5th of March or the 7th of March, Owen comes to this building with a gun.
With a pistol.
With the pistol, right? And he proceeds to show it to 2 staff members. One staff member is the manager who's responsible for the contract, right? Tailgates his way into the office, sits with the manager, shows the gun, right? On the same day, he shows my PA, asked her, why are you sending me these notices of cancellation? And she says, I'm doing my job. I'm in the CEO's office. He shows her the gun. Last year at the pre-AGM engagement, I said to members, the level of abuse and harassment and threatening behavior that is targeted towards SAMRO staff is unacceptable. And as long as I'm here, I'm not going to stand for it.
What has SAMRO done?
So this is what we then did subsequent to the gun issue, right? And I've said to members, I'm actually going to name people who are doing these actions now. And Owen is one of them, right? So after the 7th or the 5th, I think it was the 7th of March, I can't remember the exact date. The 5th of March, that was a Wednesday. On the Friday, I then went to the magistrate's court. I got an interim protection order against Owen, right? Because my staff, I've got a responsibility to the safety and safe well-being of staff, visitors, and tenants, right? By exposing the gun, you are intimidating, you are threatening, and you are harassing us, right? Went and got an interim protection order. We were back in court and got an interim protection order, went to the police station to try and get a case open, was sent back and forth by the police. Eventually, we got a case opened, right? We were back at the magistrate's court around the interim protection order on the 10th of April, where the magistrate said, well, you're on the 3rd floor, he's on the 7th floor, grant him access. But he's not wanting to leave the building. So now there's another matter with an eviction application, right? So what catalyzed some of it is because of these actions, right? And because Owen has been allowed to get away with it, because of misogyny, because of patriarchy, because of bullying tactics, right? We've had to heighten our security. I seldom come to the office. I've got managers who don't want to come to the office.
Because people are not feeling safe.
People are not feeling safe.
Has this been communicated to the members? Because if people are not coming to the office, it means that members are not being serviced.
So in terms of member servicing and member relations, what we do, the staff members, we're on a hybrid, but what we also do have is we've introduced a new booking system. So if you do want to come into the office, please let us know that you want to come so that we make sure that you'll be properly serviced, so that we don't want to not service members for any reason, right? So we've introduced these new systems just to help us better manage and service our members.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Are those questions getting ready? Yeah. It's fascinating. Fascinating.
Very fascinating.
Yeah. What I'm gathering, Annabell, is that there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between issues that are, for all intents and purposes, clear as they are understood by SAMRO board and management, and how that communication then filters through to members. It may be that the majority of members understand and they're fine, but because the way in which public discourse lives is that where there is acrimony, that noise makes an impression that there's
drama, there's
drama, and members don't understand. I'm going to go through some of these questions. Then we'll, I think Karabo asking how much was the space sold for? But I think we've answered that.
We've answered that question. The building is not sold.
How much did SAMRO buy the building for? We asking the questions based on what she's saying. How much?
So maybe this building was bought in 2008. So 2008. I don't have. No. Maybe let me say this. Let me explain it this way. So SAMRO has got subsidiaries. So there's SAMRO NPC at the group level.
Right.
SAMRO has got SAMRO House Holdings.
Right.
SAMRO House Holdings bought the property.
Right.
Right. I think at that time it was 114 million, if I'm not mistaken. Right. My figures I stand to be corrected. SAMRO House Holdings bought this building, but SAMRO House Holdings did not have the cash, the funds to buy the building.
Right.
So SAMRO House Holdings went to SAMRO NPC, to the mother, and said, please, can you loan me the money to buy the building?
Right.
Right. And members would probably appreciate that at AGMs, the Audit and Risk Committee chairperson will speak about an intercompany loan.
Right.
So there's a relationship between these two legal entities,
NPC
and House Holdings,
right,
around what is called an intercompany loan.
Right.
Right. So when they bought the building, SAMRO NPC got a loan. SAMRO NPC has to service the loan. It's like going to the bank. You have to service the loan every month.
Right.
How does SAMRO House do that? It does that through tenancy, right? We've got tenants, but obviously at the moment, the loan, the last valuation was probably around 175 million, right? So we know this intercompany loan relationship. It's not going to go away anytime soon.
Right.
It's not going to go. It's really,
right, yeah.
But there is this issue that needs to be resolved. How is it going to be resolved? So, but just to repeat again, and I think it was just important for members to understand where the assets sit, which is the building,
right,
in relation to the group.
Right,
you know,
right.
There is no sale of the building on the table at the moment. We'd received an offer. Management's responsibility was to take the offer to the board, and the board said, no, at the point that we think that we should be selling, we will do the right thing and engage with members.
So the question is, which organization or person committed fraud and claimed works they had no rights to in the undoc? So that, they're asking for name and shame, insofar as that fraudulent, that attempted fraudulent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've said to members, we're not going to name and shame because of the criminal investigation. When we are advised differently, we will release the document.
Right. Yeah, I think that question was coming from Day Traders SA. And then Shafika Jardine, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Does SAMRO not have a licensing department that can source Q sheets direct from the production houses?
So the Q sheet issues would be dealt with by the distribution department, because the distributions department is the one that receives the Q sheets and then does the calculations based on usage, etc., etc., etc.
Right.
But I think we spoke about this a bit earlier on, in that we're looking at different providers. So, for example, if a member says to us, maybe this is just a by the way example, if a member says to us, SAMRO, you've paid me for X, but when I go to Radio Monitor is giving me higher usage.
Right.
SAMRO will take this report from Radio Monitor as given by the member and say, okay, actually, you're right. What we got from the broadcaster is not right. So we will trust that source, and then we will pay you the difference, which is what is owed to you.
It seems to me, I mean, this is coming up a lot, and I've seen it in another thing, is that people have an understanding that there's, about what happened to the money in the undoc list, right? Who claimed the works on the undoc that did not belong to their catalog? What are the legal actions that SAMRO has taken? We also want a list of those who were involved with defrauding money. It's part of this. I mean, it seems this. I think we've answered the question.
I think we've answered it.
But I think we need to clarify it, because it's coming back over and over again, and I can see where the misunderstanding comes. Right, because if you are saying that it was 50%, 50% money was paid and it was rightfully paid, but the 50% other 50%, I think 30.4 million,
is the one that was deemed to have been
fraudulent,
irregular.
It was not paid.
So we've said to the members that as part of the civil process, where we go to members to say pay back the money, we are working through that list to say
there is
to
money
members,
that was paid to
people.
Yes.
But you have to pay it back. If you can't prove that it's yours, right? If you cannot say accurately, correctly, honestly, this is my work, then it doesn't belong to you.
So you have to
pay back the money. And this is the civil claims process.
Right. So that civil claim process is resolving this question.
Yes.
The question then, I suppose, following question is that, will the list of those people will not be made public because of the forensic?
Because of the investigation, because of the criminal investigation.
Right. And once it's concluded, I mentioned that.
Yes, of course. Yeah, no, yes.
I think that commitment needs to come.
I think members rightfully should know, right?
Who
defrauded from among themselves,
Right.
There was an interesting question that I also saw yesterday about, so what does it mean for members going forward, sort of when you look at this totality of issues around undoc? And I want to relate it to this campaign that Owen has driven, right? So he first released, it was the building, it was secondly the undock, and then it was Annabell and 10 million. We haven't covered that yet, right? But when it comes to the undock and the reputational damage that this has unleashed, I want members to understand something. It's damaged SAMRO's reputation to the extent that when we go out to license, I want members to understand this relationship. When we go out to licensees and say to them, you need to be licensed, you're using our members' repertoire, our members' catalog. You know what licensees more often than not say? Licensees will, but SAMRO is not using money properly. SAMRO is not paying its artists properly. So why should we? Why should we pay you properly?
Yeah, if you are not looking after them,
looking after your members' funds and finances, why should we pay? So this is what this creates. So the result of that is, and God forbid this actually happens, we might see a reduction in what we're able to collect. We've been fortunate in the past 2 years, we've had double-digit increase in license revenue collected.
Right.
We had 12.5%, 12.3% in FY 23-24. We're struggling right now to meet double-digit, right? But the result of this level of intentional campaign to break SAMRO down, as Owen has said in his words, to bring it down, is going to impact members. Right. It's going to impact what members can ultimately get and what we then able to do in terms of collecting and licensing.
Right. I think it's Kaugelo Ntweng is asking, how does one pitch in the same way that Owen pitched to be a service provider, but he seems to want to pitch a project that helps to drive information in rural areas for members. How does that process work? So I'm Kaugelo. I have ideas about how to drive an information and education project in rural areas. As I was saying, for those kids who want to get into music and how their relationship with some.
Look, we are always inundated with proposals and requests to partner in whatever capacity or to procure services. Best channel is to come through the door. We've got a marketing comms division. We've got, if it's licensing related, if it's member services related, there's a GM for member services. There's the chief operations officer. So put a formal request and SAMRO will engage with it.
Right. Mutsumi Abram asks, I have been contacting SAMRO about my music playing on radio since 2014, but only to find out that I'm only going to be paid for 2022 to 2023. Why does that?
Okay, so I think what I'd like to say to Mutsumi is, remember the prescription issue, right? One. But secondly, we've got a policy called Complex Member Disputes Policy. And what that policy says is we recognize that there are historical issues and it allows a 10-year retrospective correction if needs be.
Right.
We recognize that there are some historical issues that we need to contend with and deal with. So we've created a policy that allows us to deal with those complex issues. You'll say, Kat 15, my song played there, whatever the case is, I've got this information, I've got the radio monitor report, please come forward. So we want to do right by our members, even if it's historical issues. So we've got a policy that helps us to deal with those complex issues that sort of are beyond the prescription period as well.
Right. So I mean, just to reiterate, the prescription issue, how does it relate to him being paid only for 2?
Remember, he says he's referred to a 2014 play.
Right.
Period.
It's been playing since 2014. He's only going to be paid 2020, 2023. And you're saying prescription works for 3 years?
So I get it to the prescribed for 3 years.
Right.
Because there's a historical aspect to what he's saying, there's a claim. So he's trying to go back in time to demonstrate that he should actually have been paid more or better or higher.
Probably sitting in.
Yes, right. So go to the Undoc portal, see if your works is there. Please come to member services and through the team say that you'd want this matter to be investigated, and they will.
Right. Then Karabu is asking why in this age SAMRO is still struggling with accurate reporting from broadcaster. It's been your biggest problem for years, hence the Undoc growing each year.
So we can only control that which is within our area of control, right? We can't control what happens at the broadcaster side. But I think we canvassed this point earlier on, so much so that we've actually said to certain broadcasters, we realize the administrative burden of filling this information.
Right.
Can we bring a resource at our cost? We will have somebody sit in your office and be the Q sheet controller.
Right.
So because we know the information that we need. If you are struggling, although it's your legal obligation as a music user to give us information, but we are willing. So it's not SAMRO not trying and availing all measures and resources to help the broadcaster. The broadcaster, in some instances, is less interested.
Right. There are verbal questions, I'm noting them. I just want to go through. I know people are watching and they are raising their hands on the portal. They want to ask questions. So we'll attend to those questions. I just wanted to at least push this list quickly. So people should please bear with us. Tabangu is asking, if an artist is a SAMRO member and is signed to a publisher and the publisher registers the artist's album, do you pay out royalties to both the artist and publisher, or only the publisher? Then it's the publisher's responsibility to pay the artist. And if the publisher registers the album, why is it that it does not show under the artist's registered works on their online SAMRO profile? So,
So general rule is it's a 50-50 split between composer and publisher, right? So I would say that yes. He must come in to member services.
It's Thabo Ngube.
Sorry, Thabo.
Yeah.
Come into member services, go through your profile, go and bring your publisher in. You can actually do that. Sit with the team and actually try to find where your areas of concern are and how to address them.
Right.
So sometimes all it just takes is coming in and the team is well versed and well equipped to address member concerns and issues and correct what needs to be corrected.
Right. And then Eremi Feber, if I'm pronouncing it right, sorry, Eremi, why is SAMRO hunting down NS Undoc members so hard when they don't even pay their registered users with all their info in order without a fight? I don't know. Yeah.
At the end of the day, we have to clear that liability, right, and distribute.
Right.
We exist to distribute.
Right.
Whether you're a member, we are sitting with your money. We want you to be a member, right? So if there's a sense or experience from this member that they're not being paid accurately when they go through their statements, please come. It's a phone call, it's an email, it's a request for a meeting. We would correct, and if there's a need for like adjustments, we'll do that in post distribution.
Yeah. It's Day Trader SA again. Why is SAMRO now not showing the actual day of distribution on your website? Just giving us the month is insufficient. Look at the TV sequence. It was paid today, 4 months into the year. So you are paying in the second quarter. How must rights holders survive? We also have rent to pay on the 25th.
So we do, I think that's a noted concern. We do publish on our website the distribution schedules. I think what the member is saying is be specific, say on the 28th and keep to that date.
Right.
And it's something that we strive to always meet those particular dates. Maybe I should actually apologize to members because we've been transitioning from one system to the other. And I think in that process, we might have missed our own dates that we'd set, which resulted in members not being paid on the dates that we said we would. And I do believe that the settling of the system and the distributions that we've been able to do through this new system is going to be much better and will serve our members much better.
Right. Jeremy Faber has this question. Why can't SAMRO collect the money from the radio station for my songs or song at the per second rate, then tally up all my songs, deduct their collection fee, and then distribute that money to me? Why do we need to be part of a collection pool? The undocumented works can be another issue altogether. So does that make sense?
So I think I'm understanding, Jeremy, to mean, why are you not paying me as and when you get my money for my song?
No. So I think
so we pay all the rights holders, all the rights holders who are participating in that distribution based on usage. Yes. Right. So when we get information from radio stations, we have to analyze who is eligible for payment for that particular distribution.
Right.
And then do the calculations based on the R1, the 1 million that we got, who is meant to get what based on usage. So it's all informed by usage.
Right. Okay. I hope Jeremy.
I hope we've answered. If not, Jeremy, please drop us an email.
Right. We are in 2025 and your SAMRO website still bombs out 10 minutes and all data is lost. Why can't SAMRO fix this outdated issue? Looks like you hired incompetent IT company to run SAMRO website. And then Karabo, are any board members involved in undoc missing or stolen royalties? Are those in, if any, it's think the spelling and the writing. Are those, if any, suspended? If not, who? So maybe just to simplify, in that issue with the forensic report, have any board members been implicated? And if any, have they been suspended? Of course, you've said that you will not be dealing with will be naming and shaming because the investigation is ongoing, and members will know once that's done. So, another thing is this full member thing. Who is a full member of SAMRO and who is not? This is something I noticed on most of the scholarships and fundings posted. Explain to us what being a full member of SAMRO means.
So when you come through to SAMRO, you get a welcome pack. And that welcome pack will say, I think will say, as a prospect member, this is what it means. Right. You become eligible to be an associate member once you've earned consecutively for 3 years, minimum 100 rands, right? And then you get elected. Those are the rules. The organization, as I said, is governed by a set of rules. And those rules are also interpreted from the Memorandum of Incorporation. Perfect. So we take cue from that founding document. Everything that we do is within the prescripts of the founding document, and that's how it was designed. That you have to progress. As you progress, you're earning and you're getting access to certain responsibilities and rights, I guess, as a member.
Right. So there seems to be a convergence on the questions on Marcia Schultz. I'm going to read out Marcia Schultz's question, and then we're going to take the live ones. Why does my digital distribution through CD Baby work like a bomb? Meaning every single track is listed and reported to me with the exact amount which is owed to me. But SAMRO's system is not functional. SAMRO is being paid to operate functional, but they make it impossible for members to understand and claim. I have to phone and send 10 emails to get an answer.
So remember what I said about the participants in the pool? and the rate that is applied at that time. So the spot rate, if I can borrow from exchange rates, the spot rate applies at the time when we look at how many participants in that pool need to participate, right? So if and I used Radio Monitor a bit earlier on, if you're saying that CD Baby or Radio Monitor is saying your usage was higher than what SAMRO has got from its source documents, then we would reconcile and see which one is more accurate and which one is not. And in that way, if needs be, do an adjustment and pay you in the next sequence.
We're going to take, I think maybe let's say 4 questions. But once we've done that, I mean, another burning issue that I think we're at risk of not addressing fairly is the 10 million issue.
Please.
I think we need to deal with that. Yeah. Please. Eugene. Yeah. Let's hear Eugene. What's Eugene's name? Let's hear Eugene's question. Hi, Eugene. Let's hear Eugene's question.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, thanks for watching, Eugene. Your
it's
question.
Eugene Petwa. I want to check with the CEO. She has responded to the issue of the sale of the building and said there is nothing of that sort. If I were to put it to her that there was a decision by the board to sell the building and we are able to prove that, what would be her comment to that? And if she's found wanting, what would she expect members to do around that or about her? The second one is the issue of forensic investigation. I want her to tell the members. Yes, she says that she can't mention. I don't see why. What is the reason not to mention people's names who are alleged to have done something wrong, that they are, as an organization, pursuing to get them to pay back the money, which means they know who they are. The names will not interfere with the investigation. It is the details around that. Whether if those members that have been alleged to have done something wrong, why are they still in the board of SAMRO? Is SAMRO not concerned that the same people who have been found wanting, they are still serving in the board? Why there's no provisional suspension of those board members pending the investigation and the completion of the case? Because they are a risk. To be quite correct, they are a risk to the board because they are sitting in the board, but they've committed crime within the board. And I'm saying this with the respect it deserves. You can't. You see, when you go to the bank and attempt robbery, whether you have taken the money or you didn't take the money, you are considered a criminal, and you will be punished according to that. So SAMRO's approach to say we cannot deal with members like that. We are building and what you are saying you are building with criminals, or does it mean that because they did not take money, they attempted to claim on undocs fraudulently? So, even if it was only 30 million that was paid, the 60 million remains that it was attempted. So those are criminals who have attempted. You can't just say, oh no, be comfortable members because only 3 million was paid out of the attempted robbery. If you go and attempt robbery today, you'll be shot. Even if you didn't get to ultimately take the money successfully, you will be shot, you'll be arrested. Why is SAMRO lenient? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Eugene. 2 questions from Eugene. Let's take 2 more while you think about the answers.
Simon.
Karabo, Nanako yote.
Karabo Coyote.
Oh,
Coyote's son.
right, Karabo Coyote. I was getting scared. How does that work? So that's Karabo Coyote, and say another one. And Simon and Tuli. All right, in that order, Karabo, Simon. Right. Hi, Karabo, how are you? Karabo, can you hear us? Karabo? Oh, Karabo seems to be struggling, or maybe he moved on. Let's speak to Simon Tuli then. Rasai.
Good day. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I just have two questions. The first question, I'd like to know if SAMRO is thinking about licensing the taxi industry because they use quite a lot of music. Second question, I'd like to know why is SAMRO not using the accurate or more accurate data info from Radio Monitor to complement the info that they receive from SABC and other users. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Sai. Let's check with Karabo again before we move on. Karabo? Karabo? Coyote? Yeah, no, I think we've lost Karabo. Okay, we've got 4 questions. Yeah, I think let's deal with that. I think the more pressing one, that seems to be more contentious is Eugene's question about, where he says that what would you say if they say they've got proof that there was a board decision to actually sell the building? And what would you say about that?
So, by virtue of being an executive, I'm also an executive director of the board.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I'm fully conversant with the decisions of the board.
Right.
I mentioned earlier on that we had received an offer to purchase.
Right.
Wasn't the first time. I think since I've been here, we've probably received 2, 3 offers or even interest, people wanting to know, what would be our position be if they came through the door. The last offer that we received, as I said, we took it to the board. Management has a responsibility to table this offer to the board.
The board, yeah.
The board said, you know what, we see, we hear, but we are not accepting. We are not selling. We want any decision that will do with the sale of a building. And I mentioned earlier on that there's a legal responsibility in terms of the rights that the board has in decision making, but there's also an ethical and moral consideration that needs to be demonstrated to members. That if there was a decision to sell, that decision would be incumbent upon or required for members to engage with that.
Right.
Is it 100 million? Is it 200 million? What is it? Right. So at this stage, and I'm going to, for not wanting to sound like I'm repeating myself, there is no decision to sell SAMRO House.
Right.
At the time that happens, the members will be duly notified. Yeah.
Eugene also further, raises an issue of the reluctance or the precautionary reluctance to release the names of people who would have been implicated in this. Yes. And
I like the word that you're using, cautionary, precautionary.
Right.
Eugene, and I said earlier on, and we said at the AGM last year, that the advice that we received from the investigating officer was, we know how these things work where reports are released prematurely. Our request to you is to not release the report so that it doesn't jeopardize our investigation. I cannot talk to investigative processes or criminal investigative processes, and I don't claim to know. But what I claim to know and am ill-advised not to hit that caution. We are simply following advice because we have gone to the criminal authorities. The criminal authorities have accepted our matter and they are saying, step back and let us do what you've asked us to do. You can't come to us and say, we are bringing a matter to you and then at the same time be taking other actions that are contrary to what you've asked us to do. So it is merely just a precautionary step that we've taken, and we've indicated to members the reasons why.
Right. I hope that answers Eugene satisfactorily. And then there's Simon Tuli who's asking about
yes. The licensing of taxi
licensing of
industry.
taxi industry and using radio monitor.
Yes.
So those are the two issues.
I would say definitely. I mean, we've got a target of 1.2 billion by 2028 to raise licensing revenue to 1.2 billion by 2028. Part of our roadmap includes the taxi industry, the fleet industry, and you might have seen recently there's a matter in court with FADASA, which represents the hotel industry, because we're saying to them, even in the rooms, that is a public performance. That is a performance right that we must protect. So there's quite a whole host of other sectors, if I can call them that, or businesses that are operating without license, the unlicensed, as I refer to them, and the taxi industry is definitely one of those. I do know that unfortunately there's been a change at political leadership, but in 2023, 2022, I know that SAMRO, through the board chairperson, had a meeting with the Minister of Transport at that time to say, we actually need you to regulate the licensing of these users in the transport sector. But as I talk about regulation, I also understand that some of these sectors are highly regulated. So unless there's a regulation that specifically speaks to a licensing requirement, then it's a conversation that we have to constantly be knocking at doors of policymakers and legislators about.
Right.
The same with the gambling boards and
so on and so on. Yeah.
And then the other question here, I did mention that we use Radio Monitor as one of the sources of information and data, and where we find that Radio Monitor's usage information might be higher to what the broadcaster has, we defer to Radio Monitors. So in instances where members would say either through REQ or whatever else, we've actually have got better information than what the broadcasters have provided, we defer to what is brought to attention. And obviously we'll also verify it with the broadcaster as well, so that it completes that that cycle of auditing, in a sense.
Right. We've got some more? All right, okay. While we're waiting for members, I think this is a very important opportunity for members. If you've got questions, if you've got concerns that you've been feeling that they need to be addressed, please, I think, find the confidence to articulate them here. Because what then happens is then 3 days down the line, you are back on social media complaining, but you had an opportunity to speak to the CEO and have your issues raised publicly. Annabell, let's get to the issue of the 10 million. Please, let's say, clarify to us and locate what the issues are for.
So all of this is part of the campaign that I mentioned, right? Remember, there was that message that said, if you don't do this, we will take you out. So I see it within that context, right?
Right.
And it less worries me because I've been in this industry long enough. And anybody and everybody who knows me long enough and what my position is.
Let's start by articulating what the accusation is.
The accusation, okay. In simple terms, the accusation is Annabell Lebethe asked Owen Ndlovu for two things. I asked him for 50% of his company, or whichever one, I don't know which one it is, or 10 million rand of the service contract. Right? That's the accusation.
That's soliciting a bribe.
Yes, that is soliciting a bribe.
Corrupt.
That is me wanting to get my hands dirty, right? Annabell has worked in this industry for more than 20 years. I sleep well at night, Percy, because I'm anti-corruption. I'm anti anything and everything to do with corruption. Right? Please bring me somebody who will say, 1994, Annabell asked me for a bribe. I dare Owen to do that. I dare Owen to show the records, other meeting, whatever it is, where I said that. And it's disingenuous. It is impugning our reputation. It's not only just done this to me, it's done this to the chairperson as well, right? It's impugning our reputation, and it's intended to cast aspersions on my integrity and the professional that I am. Let me give you, let's use logic, right? The 4 contracts that I mentioned that Owen has got, in total, all of them, ex-VAT, is about 7.2 million. These 4 contracts are 7.2 million. If you add VAT, it's about 8.3 million. How do you equate 10 million and 8.3 million? Where is 10 million going to come from? Because he doesn't have 10 million rand in the first place on these contracts alone.
All of them.
All these contracts combined. The first contract was 750. The first contract was 645. The second contract was 750,000. The third contract was 2.250 million. The last contract was 3.780 million. Where would Owen have 10 million rand to pay me from the basis of these contracts? And in one of the, as I understand it, I didn't actually watch any of these shows that he had. He mentions that I insisted on including a clause in the contracts that was an anti-corruption and anti-bribery because of the experience of the fraud matter. So we spoke earlier on about what interventions have we put in place as an organization to improve our fraud risk management responsibility.
Right.
One of those is in contract management and managing suppliers. And we've said that we need to have a clause in the contract that is about anti-corruption practices and bribe and preventing those.
Right.
In South Africa, we know it happens. Why would I insist on a clause that is about keeping with our anti-corruption position and then go to Owen? I don't know Owen from Barbershop. I've only known Owen since I've been at SAMRO. I come to SAMRO in all of 2 years. I'm already asking for bribe at the expense of my reputation and my profession and who I am.
Right.
It's actually infuriating that this is part of that campaign, and this is who he seeks to paint me out to be. But again, I know myself, and anybody who knows me knows that it doesn't quite match.
Right. I'm just. We have more calls. Great. Yeah, we have more calls. This makes me happy because people then get to speak for themselves, right?
Yes.
Can you, Benjamin, say that again? Benjamin Baloyi and Tsepang. Okay, let's start with Benjamin. Hi, Benjamin. Benjamin, can you hear me? All right. Yeah, Benjamin and Tsepang. Let's try Tsepang. Tsepang?
Hello, how are you,
Hi,
Tobe?
Tsepang. Hey, Tobe, Tsepang, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
Tsepang, if you don't mind me asking, where are you calling us from?
Bramfontein.
Bramford, just around the corner. Lovely.
Okay.
All right. Tsepang, you've got questions for us.
Yeah, my issue is queries. Like if you query something, because I've actually had a hard time with SAMRO for a couple of years, because I actually submit my work, and for years I've been doing that straight to SAMRO and online. So 2 years ago I kind of gave up, because I have done like a lot of music for a lot of drama series, movies, adverts, and etc. And I've gone to SAMRO to document the work several times, and I wasn't helped. So to my surprise, last year, somebody called me and they actually offered to help and asked me to re-register some songs. And I was very happy, because she was like really good, and she called me over the period of like 2 weeks, every day, talking to me what to do, and then at the end I did receive some money for certain works, and I believe that it's a title sequence of a series, and the series plays a lot on SABC. And then what I was paid. I had a query about what I was paid, and that query, nobody has responded to me after the query. Instead, there was money paid again to my account, and yeah, and then I called again to ask about the query, and then they told me that the query is still being resolved or investigated. So yeah, I wanted to really know, how do we deal with these queries? How does SAMRO deal with the queries? Like, what do they do?
So is your issue the pace of resolutions? Yeah.
Yeah. I think because I've had queries for years, and this time, at least, like the CEO said, that sometimes SAMRO follows up. But yeah, that's what happened. They followed up. They called me last year to register again, a song that I've registered anyway. So, and my other question is that if I had registered that song like a long time ago, like in 2021, and then now you're saying you can't pay me because it's over 3 years. You can't pay me, money is over 3 years. So, but it wasn't my fault because I had registered the song. I was just asked to re-register it again. So it's not my fault, and it's not. I registered the song immediately. I had everything, and also all the adverts, commercials, everything. I got flighting codes. I got everything. I was on point, but I never received that money, and it's a long time ago. I've done title sequence for Umfolozi Street. It's complicated for a lot of things. I've done like SABC stuff. I have a long list of things that I've done.
Tshepang, please can I interject? What's your surname?
Ramoba.
Okay, you know what? I might not have a response for you right now, but let me follow up with the team and see how we can assist. And from me, apologies for the delay that it's taken to resolve your query, and then we'll get in touch with you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think Tshepang sent a fresh email to the CEO so that it,
CEO@samro.co.za.
Just in case you wrote your name wrong in the surname, and then we have CEO of the kind of
you can send it to CEO@samro.org.za. Okay,
right.
Thanks, Tshepang.
Is Benjamin back? Do we have Benjamin back?
Thank you.
Are you back? Jamila at Money Rex. Jamila? That thank you was from Tshepang, eh? Sounded like it was Tshepang still, yeah. Yes. Jamila?
Yes, Jamila.
Oh, Jamila. How are you, Jamila?
No, Jamila.
Jamila, yeah. Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling you from Midrand.
Midrand.
Yeah.
Nice. Right. Jamila, I hope you have some very lovely questions for us. Tough ones. I like tough questions.
Oh, well, it's I don't believe it's really tough, but I mean, obviously for me, it's just a bit of concern when you go online and there's a distribution document that says specifically a sequence is going to be distributed at a certain time, and then obviously it's like, for instance, now we've been waiting for a television sequence to be distributed now in April, and there's zero communication from SAMRO's side in terms of just letting us know, guys, we are still busy with 1, 2, 3. Probably the distribution is going to be a bit late. The concern is, obviously we are creatives and we are musicians, and which means we don't earn money every month. So we depend on these distributions. So you'll be preparing things around it, and then when it doesn't happen, then it kind of puts us at the back foot. So, for me, the request, obviously, it's probably a request also just to CEO is that, like, the communication lines, can they be open and be more clear in terms of, just letting the members know if there's gonna be a delay, let us know in time that, okay, there's some internal processes that are still going on, and with distribution and stuff like that. So I think for me that's a huge concern. I mean, just like I explained, obviously the problem of artists and musicians and creatives not working full time.
Right.
So yes, and then and then obviously, and again, not to add on to the stress that my CEO has, I'm pretty happy with what the current board is doing in terms of we've seen the huge change in terms of distribution and earnings in terms of us as members since they've taken over. And we have to also acknowledge that we can't be complaining the whole time and saying we are not happy with that and this and that, but we also just take our hats off for your CEO and the team, that SAMRO. We know you're working tirelessly, and you've taken over a ship that was about to sink, and you've done quite a good job. And so, but also getting back to the forensic thing, which is obviously it's a very touchy subject. I mean, I was at the AGM twice now when obviously that was discussed, and then obviously the audit was also discussed. And the members are really informed, Uti, we need to keep this thing internal for as soon I mean as obviously there's an investigation going on, and it's so disheartening to see stuff coming out on social media and the way that it came out. So just to speak to the other members that are here, just to say, guys, let us just protect what we have. And without unity in this organization, then obviously there's a lot of we opening up room for for people to disrupt this industry that we're in. So I'm just hoping that the process of this forensic as well, like she said, once everything is done, the internal investigations, that I mean obviously the list and everything, those who are implicated could be published, and then so that we can also see the transparency coming out of the board and also the management team. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Jamila.
Thank you, Jamila. I think it's good to hear members saying you're doing a good job when you're dealing with such heavy criticism as well. Yeah,
Receive it.
Yeah. I think it's good to have people like Jamila calling in to say, "Hey, hang tight. We see what you're doing." So at least there's a reinforcement of the effort. That's a good one.
We also take it on behalf of the team.
Right.
I do. Jamila's right in calling us out where we have failed.
Right.
Where we fail members in honoring our own targets and deadlines that we set, as I said earlier on, and we will do better. We have to do better. We will do better. We're striving to be a great organization, and there are these unnecessary issues that surface every now and then that we have to bed once and for all, and we're working hard on that. So we appreciate the commendation, and the team appreciates it as well. Thank you. Thank you.
One more. Oh yes, Karabo Coyote, and you said the other one is Avatakari Mudau, all the way from the north. Avatakari, how are you? What do you mean? Avatakali?
Why do you say that with such an accent?
I'd never get a chance. I never get a chance to try my Chivenda. Avatakali?
Maybe you can type in the chat.
Yeah, maybe just put it in the chat. And you said Karabo, the other one, yeah? Yeah, Karabo Coyote. Karabo,
Thank you, sir, and thanks to everyone. Finally,
Thanks.
I'm
We
muted
lost you earlier.
because
Yeah.
I thought that maybe I was targeted because
Yeah, no, we're here so that everybody can be heard, Karabo. Nobody's going to be targeted. I am here to ensure that.
yeah.
Karabo, were
Just,
you reaching out from?
like from in terms of area.
Yeah. Would like to know, I mean, if you are in Matatiele, it gives us a sense of how far wide in the country people are situated. But if you are in Soweto, we would like to get a sense of how far we are
South of
touching.
Johannesburg. I'm south of Johannesburg.
Yeah. Thanks, Karabo.
Yeah. Just to say thanks to you guys, and I really appreciated this initiative that SAMRO is doing.
Right.
Being able to give us a chance to question these things and be able to rectify. And I also concur with what Jamela was saying earlier. I know I deal with them daily, so I know how hard they work, and we appreciate it. But also we have issues that actually goes a long way that not being fixed. It's like serious issues that are not being fixed. One will be just find out now after a querying over a year or 2 years, and find out that Showmax is not paying them. And the question will be, why are they not telling members that? That Showmax is not paying them. Is it Showmax only? Is it everything to do with DSTV? Why will a public broadcaster being able to pay and someone that is actually really making money not being able to pay? So maybe we'll deal with that. The second issue is that the query are taking too long. And when they take too long, basically mean that the work is mounting to the employees, meaning that, you're not going to be able to handle over 12,000 people if you can't even get the query that takes queries take 7 years. I can tell you that. Query can take a 7 year. You're chasing them every day, writing email every day. You know what I mean? It's not helping SAMRO, it's just making more work for them. One of their biggest issue is that SABC itself is not reporting. So they report probably, if your works is being used and they're not reporting, you have to prove it to them that it's being. How do you then prove it? Right? It should be something easy for someone from SAMRO to go to SABC, sit down on that particular radio station and say, give me the metadata, because they save their information for over 5 or 10 years. They can actually get that information, but they're not winning. They then have to sit down and calculate and say, we think in this amount, and they pay you. But it will be after a lot of work. The last one is that when people are getting frustrated, members are getting frustrated, they will then ask for a loan. That loan have interest, right? Am I still there? Is everybody still there? Okay. So the loan will have interest. My question will be, if you're making interest on a loan and you now solving my case 5 or 7 years, why can't I charge you interest as well? Would that be enough questions? Thank you so much.
Right. So this would incentivize the staff to work faster because they know, we've given this guy. Yeah, that's a fair question.
And I think it's an interesting view on the advance issue, because Garaba is right that we do offer members an advance, and it is there's an interest aspect to it, but I think the perspective that is bringing the due to left, you must also seek to do to the right.
Right. The slower resolution actually favors SAMRO because
as opposed to the
UN on the basis of the slowness.
Exactly. Look, I don't have an answer now, but I think it's opening our eyes to what could possibly or should be considered in terms of the way that the advances are handled and managed. To speak to Karabo's query resolution issues, I know because, like he said, he's constantly writing and rightly so. Right. I'm not in any way insinuating that he shouldn't. That way we need our members to hold us accountable. We need our members to really flag where we fail to do the right thing the first. And I think what I've come to understand about SAMRO and some queries is that they are so historical and complex. So there's a history and there's a complexity, right?
Right.
And Garabo has highlighted some of those to me, and I know that the COO is dealing with them. They're on her table. We've got a department that actually deals with complex member queries reporting to the COO, and we seek to resolve as many of those as possible. It might not be at the rate, and 7 years I think is just unduly long. You know, I'm not
You might
I'm
not
not
be
condoning that. No, I'm not condoning that at all.
Right.
But it does speak to the system that I mentioned a bit earlier on. What it's also meant to help us do is to reduce the number of historical issues, because the system is able to assist members to match better, to identify better, to not allow members to register new works when there's already an existing works, even for us. You know, to help us also understand the copyright responsibilities within the system, as far down as sub-publishing agreements, admin agreements, etc., etc. You know, so we've really worked hard at bringing to the fore IT to help us deal with these issues, and hopefully going forward, there shouldn't be anything that becomes a query now with the system being deployed in the way that it has been deployed. But needless to say, we still have to attend to the issues that Garabo has highlighted. And like I said, we seek to do better.
Yeah, so Garabo must take it to AGM.
No, please, Garabo, no. Garabo knows not to take it to AGM. He's got my email, he's got a post email, he does, right? And I appreciate the fact that Garabo is consistent in holding us to account.
It also helps when members have good suggestions to
Yes. And we open to those. Yesterday there were some suggestions that came from the questions, you know, about the queries, the resolutions, the system. Somebody made a mention of the website. We thought are you here? We thought the website was actually quite good.
Right.
But clearly somebody's experience is different. It's the portal.
Right.
We have to work on it. Yeah.
Do we have more questions? Callers? Say it again. Day traders. SA. Yeah, she's been writing, or he's been writing. Yes. Day traders.
Yes.
I don't know why I assume day traders was female. I don't know.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. The name is Thabo Malefani.
Thabo Malefani.
From Mino Music.
Mino Music. Where are you calling us from, Thabo Malefani?
I'm calling you from Northgate.
Northgate. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thabo, what's your question?
I think the CEO touched on one of the questions that I wanted to ask. In fact, there was a complaint about the website. You know, when you have works that you are uploading there, when you get to the fifth work, like you're uploading metadata of a song, and it's the fifth song that you're uploading, the system just bombs out. It doesn't allow you to load more data, and you lose all the data, all the 5 songs that you've loaded on the system. So it bombs out. It doesn't last for even 10 minutes. So if you've got, like, let's say you've got 25 songs that you want to upload on the portal, you'd have to upload 3 songs, finish registering them, close everything, and refresh the website again. So every you understand, like if you have 25 songs, it's gonna take you almost an hour just to upload those songs, because if you upload all 25 of them, it's going to bomb out on you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the first
it's
complaint I have. So I think such problems used to be experienced in the 90s. Like 90s websites bomb out like that. They used to bomb out like that.
Right.
But we in 2025, and websites don't bomb out like that. So there is a serious problem with your IT department. Why they're not sorting out this problem? Because people complain about this all the time. It's not the first time. Probably we in the 5th year, we complaining about this. And SAMRO is not doing anything about it. Right? That's the first issue.
So that's a
issue,
conversation for the...
So your IT department needs to sort that out ASAP. The second problem that
what's the second question?
The second problem is the undocked list. With the undocked list, there are songs that have all the details there. There's no missing information. The publisher is right. The name of the song is right. The name of the artist is right. But it still ends up on the undocked list. Like some of the songs that have full information, all the information is there, still end up on the undocked list. And it's a problem because every time you would update this information and the following year the same song appears on the undocked list. So that is my greatest problem right now because every single year, this time of the year, I'm always updating the same songs.
Right.
And I'm a
Right.
music
So,
publisher. So I'm going through this every single year. Same
right.
songs that were on the undocked list last year will appear on the undocked list this year, even though I've updated it on the system.
All right. So the systems up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we have a systems issue there. Thanks, my guy.
And the last one is
That
why
question.
is SAMRO? Because SAMRO on your website, you used to display the day of distribution. Like for instance, the TV distribution, you just put April. It's so open-ended. We need a day. You know, like I was complaining in the chat right there. Like it's we in the second quarter of the year. 4 months later into the year, we are only getting TV royalties now. How much we pay rent? Because it used to make sense when you guys used to pay in March. Then the Capasso royalties would come in March. Then with all that money, you would sort out the whole year. You know, you can organize yourself as a company or as an organization or as a composer or as an artist with all those royalties because they're closer to each other. Now, Capasso has paid a month ago. You are paying this month, and it doesn't make sense. And you are paying into the second quarter of the year.
Right. So
Some of the people
the
are gonna get
frequency.
their money tomorrow or in 2 days' time, which is already like 5 months later. How must we survive as artists or composers?
Right.
I'm done. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, my guy.
Thanks, Tabo.
You want to handle those?
Yeah, Tabo, the frustration is well noted. I think earlier on as well, Jamela had spoken about the requirement for us to be specific with when the distributions will
Yeah, I
happen,
was
as
about to say
opposed
that
to
was
just a sort of a
month.
generic month
Right.
schedule thing. I've heard the frustration, and on behalf of my team, I do want to apologize. There shouldn't be a reason why the distribution hasn't gone out, and we should be actually sticking to the dates that we said we committed to, if nothing else. I know that Jamal had also said, if something happens, let us know. Don't be quiet. Don't
Right. It's a
communicate. Tell
Yeah.
us so that we know how to also plan. And I think that's just a fair request, a fair requirement, and it should be standard. It should be standard. We'll take the responsibility and the accountability for it. I take the accountability for why it hasn't been done in the most effective and efficient way, and we'll make sure that we seek to course correct.
Right. So we've got 4 questions, and we're going to take them in that sequence. These are final.
Sorry,
calls.
Percy, before you move on, Garabo had asked a question about Showmax, whether
Right,
or not
yeah, which
Showmax
is not
is not
paying.
paying.
Right.
So we do have a license with MultiChoice, and we are in negotiation with MultiChoice around sort of a new period of the license.
Right.
There are certain stations within the MultiChoice bouquet or the DSTV bouquet that have got their own individual licenses outside of the generic MultiChoice one. But Showmax should definitely be on our licensed stations.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Great. So they will be paying.
Yes.
All right. So we'll take this in this sequence. Tabon Ngube, Eugene again, I think. Kabelo Katlampe, and Moses Mbambo. Moses Mbambo is the last one. So it's Tabo, Eugene, Kabelo, and Moses in that order. Okay. Let's be very what you call it, concise and in our question and pointed. Right. Tibos.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, my guy. Tabo, where are you calling us from?
I'm actually from south of Johannesburg, so Soweto.
south of Johannesburg. Right.
Yes.
Thank you. What's your question,
All right.
Stabo?
Awesome stuff. Just simple and to the point, right? So I had a query that I was dealing with last month whereby I had to update my copyright on my music, right? So it was confirmed that everything was done. Certain songs of mine were updated in terms of my copyright, and I got that confirmation from one of the consultants that work from SAMRO. Cool. Fast forward a month later, I still go into my portal for my artist portal, and certain works are still not there. They're still not registered, and the copyright has still not been updated. Some of my works are pitching up under my catalog, but there are certain works that I know for a fact are getting airplay, but they are not pitching up under my catalog. So it's like I can't access my statements, I can't access anything related to them, but I can locate the songs that I can't locate in my portal, but I can locate them under the SAMRO registered works portal or in the undocumented works portal. So my question is, like, it's kind of like I'm getting confirmation that yes, everything has been updated, but on the website it doesn't reflect that.
Right.
Tabo, please can I ask you to drop me an email at ceo@samro.org.za, please?
All right.
And then we will deal
In
with
this email, should I just basically explain the whole situation to you?
Yes, please. Yes,
Right.
please. Yes, please.
Okay, so you said it's CEO@samro.org.
Yeah. .org.za.
.org.za.
Yes, yes.
Hello? I didn't catch.
Yes.
CEO@samro.org.za. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tabo.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stabo. And
Cool
then
stuff.
we've got Eugene coming up next. I wonder if it's the same Eugene.
It is the
Eugene?
same Eugene, indeed.
All right. All right.
The question around the board members who are implicated still in the board was not answered. And then further to that, the issue of Undoc, I want to explain this so that, because I heard that the CEO says that they go back retrospectively 10 years back. And I want to show and also educate members around this issue, why I stood up to fight the issue of Undoc. And today I stand vindicated of the allegations that I was saying this is what was happening with the Undoc. You just had a publisher before, I think it was from Mino Music, saying that the Undocs, they go back into Undocs, even after you have rectified. I was against the issue of re-notifications because I was saying this was done, it is not members and publishers who did this. It is members or publishers who were conniving with staff members who did this deliberate. It was a deliberate thing to be done so that the money goes into the suspense account, and then after 3 years it prescribes and then it goes. And that prescription was arbitrarily, because prescription works in this manner. If you have notified me as SAMRO that there is a challenge with my works, if somebody comes and say, Mahasmane, I composed Mahasmane with Trumpis, but I was not included in the notifications, you can't just change and then add that person without verifying with the original composers. We agreed that was a situation that was there. Now I intercepted CEO on 2 occasions where Sony ATV was re-notifying the same song every year, and in a year twice or thrice. I reported the matter. SAMRO has not dealt with that matter, has not came back to me. It's 3 years now. 3 years I've reported that, and I keep on sending emails to you and to Mpho, who has been very wonderful, because I believe without Mpho we wouldn't be where we are today, because that's the person who accepted the responsibility and not just became defensive about issues, contrary to others. That complaint, it was about Sony ATV. And I can tell you, even today, Sony ATV, Universal, Galo, CM Music, I don't know which is other one. They are part of the people who fraudulently claimed. but they're still in the board. My issue, that's why I was asking, if aren't you scared that you still have people who are very mischievous in their behavior, yet they are still sitting in the board? How would they influence SAMRO to do good when they are implicated, yet they are still kept? I know that you are scared of them because they pay, maybe they are the ones who are paying your salaries and all these benefits that are guaranteed for all of you when we don't have benefits as composers. So maybe you're scared of them. Just tell us, just be open and be upfront with it. If you're scared of them, that's fine. But don't hide around the issue of investigation, because we know who they are, but they are not dealt with. You have people who were participating in the 48 million rands that went into Dubai. They are still sitting in the board and acting as if they were not party to that situation. They were sleeping on their job. Dereliction of fiduciary duties, but they are still board members. How do you qualify somebody who can't take responsibility of fiduciary duties, and then he comes back because he's got this power, veto power, because of their proxy? Those are the issues that you need to deal with. The issue of undocumented works. You know how much it has hurt us, how much it has taken away so much of our work and our wealth. Because you can imagine, now, if you are saying 10 years back, okay, I'm saying to you, Skiang Ngoma was released in 1994. And it had high rotation at that time. It means I could have earned so much money, and so much money could have also be invested on my retirement fund and other benefits. But I lost on those. So if you're saying going back 10 years, I'm still gonna get those royalties. It's like you've been working for 25 years and you're told that no, because you just complained about the losses that you have been experiencing over 25 years. Accept that we are going to pay you for 5 years, from 5 years backwards, and not 25 years. How can I lose so much money? When I retire without money. When I die, I will die without money, because you have decided that no, we can't pay you from 25 years, even though we know it wasn't your mistake, it was our mistake, which is what we are paying you 20% for. It is to administer our works, not me administering my works in order for you to earn. This is exactly what you are saying to us when you say go back to the system and re-notify the works that you had notified, which were taken deliberately out of the documented works into undocumented works. Now I must do the administration for myself, yet you have earned salaries for 30 years, for 40 years, others. When you are not doing the work, that I must do that work now. But yet you are taking 20%. In fact, you are even taking more than 30% before. Now you are taking 20%. But the burden lies with me to rectify that. Why don't you rectify it? Why don't you hire your members and give them a stipend to come and assist you with the backlog? Why should it be my responsibility? And you can see at the moment who are participating is people from Johannesburg. That must also show you that your communication doesn't reach the people in the rural areas, in the Chuchuwe, those who are traditional musicians. They are not even able to participate in these platforms, because these platforms are meant for people who are coming from urban areas who are more educated. You've got a majority of members who are not educated. I hope you could take these and move forward with that understanding that you are dealing with people who are not educated. These high level engagements that you are constantly having are not working. We used to call AGMs, extraordinary general meetings, what the only problem that when a black person took over, they became something else that cannot be touched, untouchables. We had Rob Hoyer, a white person that was very accessible. You guys are not accessible anymore, as if we members, we are a problem to you. I want to say this and in confidence, and I want to show you that where there is something wrong that is happening or something right that is happening, I will tell you. I want to tell you, and I will testify with you in court, that Owen He's a pathetic liar. Owen is full of vile. Owen is not anybody to be accepted. In fact, you must open a case. I will come and testify in the court because I was subjected to the similar treatment by Owen. I will testify. Where you have done right, I will tell you that you have done right. Where you do wrong, you know me. I'm straightforward. And I'm one person who's been fighting for members. Yet I ended up being the one who was suspended, named and shamed. But the Sonnies and what, when they do wrong things, you don't name them and shame them. You are scared of their legal contest around that. But I'm one person that was suspended as a member, was removed as a member, was taken to court. In my absence, SAMRO got a judgment against me. But you can't do the same to everybody. You are very selective. Thanks.
Thanks, Eugene.
Thanks, Eugene.
We've got Kabelo Katlampe and Moses Mbambo. Moses and Kabelo. Let's start with Kabelo. Kabelo? Did Kabelo fall away? All right, let's try Moses Mbambo. Moses, are you there? Musha?
Yebo.
Shalom. How are you? Are you all right?
Yeah, ngiyaphila ba.
Ngiyaphila nami bam. Moses, where are you getting us from?
Baba bengifuna ukubuza ngoba esikhathini samanje angithi uyazi besisebenza ngama radio station sibuye sisebenza ngama TV. Manje bengicela ukubuza ngendaba ye social media ukuthi i social media njengamanje ngoba izinga layo liyaphakama. Njengoba izinto zethu siziposta ku social media. Ana kukhona indlela ukuthi sinathi singathola ama royalties kuma social media njengabo YouTube, Facebook, TikTok nezinye kanjalo. Bengifuna ukwazi ukuthi ikhona indlela yokuthi mangabe sifaka izinto zethu ngoba sesiqala ukufaka ikhona indlela yokuthi singakhona na ukuthola something ku social media na.
Right. I think that's an important important thanks Moses. Yabong. I think that's an important question as well. Is Kabelo back? Let's see if Kabelo's back. Maybe Kabelo reconnected. Okay, we've lost Kabelo. Okay, so we'll take them. I think Tabo we dealt with earlier because it's going to send an email. Eugene went on with a number of issues that many of them which you are familiar with, but there's this issue of not naming and shaming that he seems to be going on again. I think you'll have to deal with that. And then there's Moses's social media issue. I think let's run them off that way.
Let me. Can I start with the issue?
And let me put this way, perhaps the issue, and we didn't deal with this in our conversation. I know it's a historic issue, but the Dubai issue seems to be coming back and back again. I wonder if you have a nice bow to tie it up with, so that people, those who might not know what's going on with the Dubai issue, just to give them a what it was, where it is, and how, as a historic issue, it's affecting what's happening at SAMRO now, and so on. And as a caveat to enter Eugene's questions and answers.
Okay, maybe let me start with Eugene's questions and comments. And I think these engagements are healthy. They're useful in that they really bring issues that might be known and issues that might be new. It brings perspectives that I think as management sometimes we might not necessarily have the view to, by way of commentary or suggestions or proposals, and I think those we'll definitely take on board. But to Eugene, I want to maybe speak to the being afraid or not wanting to name and shame, and I think we did address it earlier on.
Right. Yeah.
That there is a deliberateness in why we're not sharing that information now. And as I don't think that Eugene was at the 2024 AGM, but we had said to members, and I can understand there's a history related to EMRO.
Right.
There's a history related to EMRO. So I think maybe there's just a connection in the sentiment around these forensic audits and what they mean, right? But suffice to say that there is a precaution that has been expressed to us.
Right.
I've got no legitimate basis to not heed that caution. Right? That caution says, utlile ko rona war o kopa thuso ko maponeseng. Maponesa are, we're going to take your matter. Step back. Well, Maponesa have told me to step back. I'm now releasing a document that the police have specifically said, because we know and we do these commercial crime processes and investigations all the time, there's a concern about releasing documents. Because if in our investigation, in the course of an investigation, something happens, how are we going to justify because you then release the document that hinders our ability? So it's nothing other than being in a position of heeding advice from authorities. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. That makes sense to me. What Eugene also made mention, I mean, he mentioned
a few things,
a few
yes,
companies,
yes,
you know, or member companies,
yes,
you know,
yes,
by way of publishers, which I will not repeat for fear of lying.
So we have said, and I think it's important to say that the members who were involved in the irregular claims are members. They are composer members, they're author members, they're publisher members. Right? So, and I want to move away from the industry narrative that's always citing publishers. And maybe I can do so because I don't come from the industry. I don't have a history of the industry. Right? And it doesn't take away from the sentiment that exists. I'm purely looking at this document with the view that says it was across the membership base. It wasn't either or, it wasn't only. It was across the membership base that this extent of alleged fraud was committed and conducted, and where there was a payment that was deemed to be irregular. It was across the membership base. So there's no, but kidi composer fella or no, but kidi publisher fella. No, it was across the board.
And you're making a commitment that as soon as the investigators say, okay, you can go public, you will name and shame.
There's nothing that would stop us then in that respect from sharing that document.
So Eugene should hold you accountable.
Yes.
As soon as they say go, he needs to say, hey, you said you'll name and shame. We want those names.
I do want to say that I think because it has come up, the issue around members and elections and who sits on the board. The members elect the board members that represent the membership, that come from the membership. They're elected through a process at the AGM, right? They're nominated through a process, they're elected through a process.
So that if people feel, at the risk of us answering your questions for you, at the risk, so if members feel that there are people on the board who they feel should not be on the board, at the AGM, they are more than welcome to vote those people out.
They are more than welcome to not nominate them. They're more than welcome to not vote for them. So there is a two-pronged process. It's a nomination process. It's a voting process.
Right.
Yes.
And is there a way to say, no, such and such a person has been nominated? We feel that
I strongly know. I know SAMRO members to be vocal enough to at an AGM say that. So there's nothing that precludes a member from standing up and saying, we've got XYZ concern with Annabell and Percy, and actually, can we look at it? There's nothing that precludes them, because that is what that process is about. There should be objections, there should be support, either way.
I'm asking this question because Eugene makes a point that there are people who were involved in alleged wrongdoing insofar as it relates to a historic issue of money.
SAMRO. Dubai.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
And those people were found wanting, to use his words, and they're still on the board. So I'm asking to say there's been a number of AGMs where those people would have been nominated
and voted for
by members.
By members.
Right.
So management has got no involvement in that process. That is purely a member process.
Right.
We only guide, we only prepare, we only do the administrative aspect of it. Right. So that is where the power of the members is in choosing who should be on the board. We don't have that power or authority.
All right. No, that makes sense to me. I think I want to close it there. We've been at it for a while.
To answer Moses' question about the
yes.
YouTube and whatever.
Yes.
So we license DSPs. So there's a growth potential in earning revenue from the digital service platform. So Netflix, Amazon Prime, Amazon Prime, Showmax, the sort of the visual side. But then there's also what are called user-generated content platforms.
Right.
The YouTube, the TikTok, Facebook, right? So even in those platforms themselves have to be licensed. The Meta has to be licensed, YouTube is licensed, TikTok would be licensed.
Yeah, I'm making a reel and a
yes. But I think what members need to understand is that there's the rate that a YouTube would apply for content in America is far higher than what YouTube would apply to content in South Africa.
Yeah.
Right? Economies of scale. That's all that it is, you know. And I think we are seeing a growth in revenue from digital across not only just South Africa, but across the world. And that's definitely where the earning potential resides. And we that's where we're chasing the big monies for members.
Makes sense. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody who has joined us. How many people have joined us, by the way? I mean, thank you. It's a lot. All right. So thank you for the members who made time to sit with us through this as we ventilated the issues. These are issues that have been in the media. They've been very contentious. I hope people feel that their concerns have been addressed, and then where people had confusions or misinformation, disinformation, those knots have been, unfurled, and people feel much more at ease and much more confident in the direction that the organization is taking, at least what I'm gathering based on the nod from Eugene, even saying that particular issue, he can testify that in fact you are right. So if you had read that story in the Sunday World like I did, and you were taken aback, that issue has been resolved, and people with queries do follow up with those queries. And I mean, you've made a commitment that queries will be, the speed at which they are resolved will improve. Perhaps next AGM, I'm imagining AGM hasn't happened yet. People should raise the issue and say, you've made a commitment to improve that.
And it's been resolved.
And it's been resolved. So thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to reading the social media with people, reflecting on the conversation, at least positively from here on.
Thank you,
Annabell.
Thank you, Percy.
Thank you,
and thank you to the members for allowing this conversation to happen as well. I think it needed to be calmer, more honest, and outside of the noise. I couldn't deal with the noise, so I needed to find a way to bring members into my confidence as to what the truth is.
I hope we've done justice to the issues. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll find out on the other side.
We will.
All right. Thank you, and have a lovely day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers. Bye, everybody.